Around 2 o'clock am, in Ipakarai, the silence of the night was shattered. Some neighbors, still awake, heard it. A young woman crying, screaming, begging for her life. Then suddenly, nothing. Silence. Doors stayed locked. Lights stayed off. No one stepped outside. No one called the police. Fear swallowed the entire street. What happened that night? And why did it take more than a year before the truth finally came to light? This isn't just a mystery. It's the story of a girl who asked for help and never received it. This is the case of Maliza Fleitas. Stay with us until the very end, because this story is not only about what happened to Maliza, it's about the silence of an entire neighborhood, the failure of a justice system, and a fugitive who turned her desperate cries into nothing more than an echo in the darkness. Maliza Fleitas was born on June 9, 1999, in Paraguay. She grew up with limited means. After her parents divorced, she lived with her father, Luis Henrique Fleitas, a street vendor and window cleaner, in a modest neighborhood. Despite difficult économiques conditions, she still grew up in love and has many special memories with her father. From a young age, she adored animals. In her free time, she and her father attended rock and heavy metal concerts, and that music became central to her identity. Over time, her style reflected the scene she loved, a darker aesthetic, multiple tattoos and piercings, and a growing independence visible on her social media. She eventually worked at a tattoo and piercing studio. Friends describe her as outgoing and energetic, charming and charismatic. However, everything changed in April 2017 when Maliza, then 17, started dating Jaime Fernandez, 32. Many said Jaime knew her father, was part of the same group of friends, often went to concerts and attended parties at home. Jaime was born in Paraguay in 1985. He moved to the United States in the 1992nd with his parents and 2 siblings. His family was well regarded. Neighbors even gathered to say goodbye when they left. But his life abroad was troubled. As a teenager, he struggled with behavior issues and substance abuse, and was often seen intoxicated. He also developed a fascination with the occult and darker music themes, especially metal. At 22, Jaime became the father of a daughter, Sofia. Although his relationship with Sofia's mother ended, he stayed in contact for his daughter's sake. In 2007, Jaime got into serious legal trouble in the United States, according to various reports. One version claims he assaulted someone in the New York City subway, leaving the victim critically injured. Another says he was involved in a gang-related fight and fled to avoid prosecution or retaliation. Whatever the case, he returned to Paraguay and kept a low profile. Jaime rarely left home except for concerts or essentials. Neighbors often saw him on Sundays eating lunch alone at his grandfather's grave. An unsettling ritual. His appearance drew attention. Long, straight hair, mostly black leather clothing, extensive tattoos, and long sleeves, even in Paraguay's intense heat. He always wore a pentagram necklace. He also owned many weapons, knives, swords, and firearms. Combined with his isolation, these details made neighbors uneasy. Jaime lived on the upper floor of his family's 2-story house. The ground floor was rented out, giving him rental income. He also received dollar remittances from relatives in the US, so he didn't need a formal job. At 30, he began dating a woman slightly older than him. Life felt steadier then. He enrolled in culinary school, pursued his passion for cooking, and moved in with her and her children. But the calm didn't last. The relationship fell apart, and by early 2017 they had separated for good. After the breakup, things worsened. Jaime reportedly fired guns from his home's windows, alarming neighbors. Though no police investigation followed, he became more socially active, hosting more visitors, and rumors spread that he was using multiple banned substances. During this chaotic period, he and Maliza began appearing together in public, at concerts and local events, clearly as a couple. Their relationship quickly drew concern. The 15-year age gap made many uneasy, but Jaime's erratic behavior was the bigger issue. Maliza's father, Luis, strongly disapproved, both because of Jaime's age and his disturbing conduct. Despite this, Maliza moved in with Jaime. From then on, little was known about her daily life. Neighbors saw her rarely leave the house. She often slept until afternoon and appeared to have dropped out of high school. The cheerful, lively young woman her friends knew seemed to be fading behind closed doors. Over the following months, friends noticed emotional and physical changes. Maliza gained weight, altered her hair color and style, and became more withdrawn. Jaime's behavior grew more troubling. He taught Maliza to use a firearm, something that might have seemed thrilling at first but soon felt like a warning about the danger around her. At one gathering at their home, friends came to listen to music. The evening soured when Jaime, consumed by jealousy, publicly berated Maliza. The argument escalated, and she stormed out that night. That moment marked a turning point. Her friends were worried when they couldn't reach her, but she appeared the next day acting as if nothing had happened. Still, concerns mounted. At another event, Maliza, Jaime, and Luis attended a rock concert together. The night turned tense when Jaime, reportedly drunk, confronted Maliza in a jealous rage. The situation escalated until police intervened. Friends felt unsettled, and they had noticed other red flags. Signs Maliza refused to discuss. Bruises and marks appeared on her face and body. When asked, she stayed silent. Her friends respected her privacy, but feared the worst. Then came the night of July 20, 2017. Maliza and her friends went to a music event at a local hostel. At first, it looked like a normal night, but her friends soon noticed her unease. She was anxious, guarded, and spoke carefully, as if worried about being overheard. In a brief moment when Jaime wasn't watching, she confided in them. She said she had learned disturbing things about him that made her feel unsafe. He was violent and unpredictable, had cut his own arms, and kept a large cache of weapons in his home. Alarmed, her friends urged her to leave and promised to help. That night, Maliza decided to end the relationship. She left the event with Jaime, saying she needed to speak with him privately and make her intentions clear. It was the last time anyone saw her alive. The next day, her friends tried to contact her. She never responded. At first, Maliza's friends thought she had simply changed her mind and decided to stay with Jaime. But by the fourth day, worry turned into fear. Jaime was spotted at another concert at the same hostel, this time without Maliza. Maliza's friends began to panic. A few days later, they saw him alone again at a local bar. Something felt wrong. One of Maliza's friends called him. When asked about Maliza, Jaime calmly said everything was fine and that they were at home together. But as more days passed without any sign of her, his answer felt less believable. Her friends began searching on their own. They went to Jaime's parents' house, hoping to find Maliza or get information, but no one was there. Desperate, they tried to file a missing person report. Police refused to take it because they weren't family members. Even so, the friends didn't give up. Convinced something terrible had happened, and suspecting Jaime, they turned to social media to spread the word. Eventually, they reached Maliza's father, Luis, who lived in another city, and told him everything. By then, 2 weeks had already passed without any contact from her. On August 10, 2017, exactly 15 days after Maliza was last seen, her father officially reported her missing, but Jaime had also vanished. A local prosecutor took the case, yet the investigation was mishandled from the start. The assigned official showed little interest. Authorities conducted a sloppy search of Jaime's house. His belongings were still there, untouched. No useful leads surfaced. Neighbors weren't interviewed. Evidence wasn't collected or preserved. By any standard, the search was negligent. With no real investigative effort, the case was quietly set aside. Officials claimed Maliza had probably left willingly with Jaime. Her friends and family knew that wasn't true. As months went by, feminist organizations in Paraguay rallied around the case, holding protests and campaigns demanding answers. The justice system's silence became impossible to ignore. As the first anniversary approached, there was still no progress. Maliza's friends and family became the driving force behind the search. They even began to consider that she might have been trafficked. Public pressure finally drew media attention. On July 24, 2018, a prominent journalist aired a major investigation. The report exposed the authorities' inaction and brought forward new witness testimonies from neighbors who had stayed silent. Multiple people said that around 2 a.m. on July 21, 2017, the night Maliza disappeared, desperate screams came from Jaime's house. She was begging for her life. But instead of calling the police, neighbors locked their doors. Too afraid to intervene, Jaime had a reputation for violent outbursts. He had fired guns from his window more than once, and no one wanted to become his next target. One neighbor later said they saw Jaime days afterward, walking around as if nothing had happened. One especially chilling account came from a tenant of Jaime's, a woman who sold plastic goods. The night of the screams, Jaime called her unexpectedly. He said he was leaving for Argentina due to health issues and told her to pay rent to his uncle. Almost as an afterthought, he added that if Maliza's father came looking for him, she should say he had already left. This detail remained hidden for nearly a year until the journalist revealed it. Public outrage and media pressure finally forced action. Authorities ordered a new, more thorough search of Jaime's house. They found firearms and money transfer receipts from the United States. But beyond that, nothing meaningful happened. The investigation stalled yet again, and no solid leads followed. 3 months later, something unexpected happened. Something that would break the case open. On October 13, 2018, construction workers doing routine jobs at a neighbor's home noticed disturbed soil in Jaime's backyard. It looked like someone had dug a large rectangular pit and covered it. At first, they weren't sure it meant anything. But when they dug a bit deeper, they found something alarming. Dozens of bullets buried more than 40 centimeters underground. They reported it to their foreman, and word spread quickly. Neighbors started connecting the dots. Maliza's disappearance, Jaime's suspicious behavior, and now this discovery. Concerned neighbors called the police, but authorities dismissed the tip and refused to respond. A close friend of Maliza's, active in a local feminist collective, tried again. This time, the police said that no forensic team would be available until Monday, October 15. Outraged, the collective went to the media. The pressure worked. 3 days later, after protests by feminist groups in Paraguay, national police finally searched the property. What they found went far beyond bullets. In the same area of the yard, they uncovered a decomposed female body. Nearby were clothing items, a black leather jacket and a pair of boots. The skull showed visible trauma, especially to the jaw. Initially thought to be from blunt force, the prosecutor revealed something disturbing. During a previous search, officers had passed over this exact spot and found nothing. This raised serious questions. Had the body been there all along? Or was it moved later? While dental records would take time to confirm, Maliza's father and friends immediately recognized the clothing. The jacket had been a gift and one of her favorites. There was no doubt. Maliza's body was taken to the judicial morgue. Investigators returned to Jaime's home for a fourth search. Inside, the press described the scene as an apartment of horror. Every room contained disturbing images and black metal references. Mythological figures and violent imagery covered the walls. Luminol tests in the main bedroom lit up with blood traces on the walls, sheets, and pillows. It was no longer just suspicion. The room had been a murder scene. A theory emerged. Maliza may have been lying face up on the bed when she was killed. Her body, wrapped in a comforter, might have been dragged through the kitchen and thrown from the balcony into the yard where she was found. More clues supported this. A bullet hole was found in the mattress. A shell casing was embedded deep in the wooden bed frame. The angle and trajectory matched an entry wound at Maliza's temple and an exit through her chin. The autopsy confirmed a close-range gunshot to the head. There was no gunpowder on her skin, indicating the gun was fired near Comas, but not pressed against her head. Despite the fatal shot, the mattress had little blood. The pillows, however, were soaked, suggesting that Jaime may have fired through them to muffle the sound. Investigators also saw unusual marks on the bedroom walls, as if something large had been attached or recently removed. Whatever it was might have played a role in the crime. Meanwhile, Maliza's friends and feminist groups came together to raise money for her funeral. They sold food in the streets, stood in the cold for hours, and even endured robberies during their efforts. Initially, Maliza was buried without a headstone. Later, her loved ones placed a memorial plaque. Her friends, along with women's groups, publicly denounced the prosecutor's failures. Her father, Luis, expressed his anger. The police hadn't found his daughter. He had. She was discovered only because of a coincidence, a construction project, and a shallow grave. After this, the prosecutors on the case were formally disciplined, and the investigation was reassigned. The case stopped being treated as a disappearance and was officially classified as a femicide. An international arrest warrant was issued for Jaime Vera Fernandez, but he had already vanished. Authorities believe he fled the country soon after Maliza's death. He has family in the United States, Brazil, France, and possibly Argentina, making him harder to track. Records indicate that after leaving Paraguay, he passed through Punta del Este and then traveled to Sao Paulo, Brazil, where he flew to Colombia. The last activity linked to him was a cash withdrawal in Mexico. Investigators suspect he may be living under a different identity in the United States. A neighbor reported seeing two men, one of them Jaime, dragging Maliza on the night she died. The backyard where she was buried was visible from the street, making it unlikely anyone could dig a grave unnoticed without help. Multiple witnesses said people visited Jaime that weekend. Despite this, no DNA tests were conducted at the scene, and no effort was made to determine whether someone else had been in the apartment or helped cover up the crime. To this day, he remains a fugitive. As of August 2025, Maliza's friends and family continue their fight. They speak to the media, organize public campaigns, and demand justice. They urge anyone who has seen Jaime or knows his whereabouts to come forward. It is likely he left Paraguay by land, crossing into Brazil on August 11, 2017, before continuing to Colombia. After that, the trail went cold. He could be anywhere. The search continues. That night, Keith Green went out to attend an important meeting, not knowing it would be the last time he would be seen. The next morning, his phone was found abandoned in Golden Gate Park. No trace, no message. As police followed each lead, they all pointed to a cold, premeditated murder. But when the trial ended, the nation was shocked. The accused walked free. It was a story that made everyone ask, is justice ever fair? Or is it only for the rich? At approximately 9:00 p.m., on April 28, 2016, Keith Green and Tiffany Lee met at Millbrae Pancake House, a small restaurant about a 30-minute drive from their former home in Hillsborough. They planned to discuss the custody of their two daughters. However, the conversation shifted, and Keith requested $4,000 per month in alimony from Tiffany, along with one of their BMW cars. He claimed these requests were to ensure their daughter's comfort when staying with him, preventing them from experiencing a significant decrease in their standard of living. The discussion lasted approximately 1 hour. Tiffany left the restaurant before Keith. The following morning, the 29th of April, around 10 o'clock a.m., a passerby discovered an unattended cell phone in San Francisco's Golden Gate Park. The phone was identified as belonging to Keith Green. This discovery was puzzling because the park was a considerable distance from Hillsborough, and Keith had no apparent reason to be there. Friends and family attempted to contact Keith by phone, but he did not answer. Tiffany also stated that she had not heard from him since they left the restaurant. By that evening, missing person flyers featuring Keith's picture were being distributed throughout the city. At the time of his disappearance, Keith was wearing black sweatpants and a white jacket with green sleeves. He had tattoos of Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X on his legs. The search moved quickly. The case took on greater urgency when it became clear that Keith hadn't returned to the friend's home where he'd been staying temporarily, nor to any relatives. None of his bank accounts had been touched, and his phone was switched off. From the moment he walked out of the diner, it was as if Keith had simply vanished. Keith Andrew Green was born on July 19, 1989, and raised in San Mateo, California. He was from a working-class family. After his parents' divorce, he lived with his mother, Colleen Cudd, although they didn't have much money. Keith was energetic and sociable. In high school, he was a talented athlete, particularly in football. As the star quarterback at Aragon High School, he led his team to an undefeated season and a playoff win in 2005. His athletic skills earned him a partial scholarship to Eastern Washington University, where he continued to play football. However, he had difficulty keeping up with his coursework and the rigorous training demands of college sports. Ultimately, he withdrew from the university before graduating. After returning to California, Keith had some run-ins with the law. As a minor, he got involved in a scheme involving the fraudulent use of Macy's gift cards. While he didn't face severe legal penalties, the incident hurt his reputation and future prospects. In early 2009, Keith met Tiffany, a young woman from a rich Chinese family in Hillsborough, California. Although they had different backgrounds and lifestyles, they started dating. Within a year, they moved into a lavish house in a very exclusive neighborhood, worth about $7 million. Tiffany's mother had given her the house as a gift. This was a huge change for Keith, who went from living simply to enjoying luxury every day. Expensive cars, household help, a nanny, and a personal driver. Keith and Tiffany have 2 daughters. From the outside, they seem like the ideal family. However, Keith wasn't steadily employed and depended on Tiffany's family for money. He said he wanted to focus on self-improvement. With Tiffany's support, he enrolled at Le Cordon Bleu in Pasadena, a well-known and costly culinary school. He was scheduled to finish his studies in September 2016 and intended to start a restaurant career. Tiffany paid for his tuition, which was approximately $40,000 per year. Despite their apparent success, problems were developing. Keith felt insecure because he relied on the Lee family for money, and this caused friction. People close to Tiffany said she started seeing Keith less as a father to her children and more as someone just spending her money. In early 2015, Keith and Tiffany's relationship began to fall apart. Keith was drinking and using marijuana. He still couldn't find a steady job. His culinary school training didn't make up for his financial and emotional reliance on Tiffany. They argued more and more often. They officially separated in October 2015. Keith moved in with a friend, but wanted to stay involved in his daughters' lives. He also tried to maintain their previous lifestyle, possibly for both their benefit and his own. However, Tiffany controlled most of the money and decisions, which made Keith feel increasingly disconnected and saddened. To better understand the story, let's learn about Tiffany's life. She was born in Beijing, China. Tiffany grew up in a wealthy family whose primary business was real estate. They owned residential and commercial properties in major Chinese cities, including a skyscraper in Beijing. Over time, the family expanded their investments to the US, the Caribbean, and other international markets. Besides real estate, they also invested in logistics, high-tech companies, and global trade. Their interests included shipping and electronic supply chains. This diverse investment strategy helped them to steadily increase their wealth. Tiffany's early years were split between two countries. She spent much of her childhood in China, attending elite private schools that emphasize strict discipline, high academic expectations, and a strong sense of hierarchy. She studied piano, practiced ballet, and participated in competitions. Concurrently, her parents introduced her to business matters from an early age, gradually involving her in family investment discussions. In 1992, Tiffany's family settled permanently in California's Silicon Valley. Then, she became a U.S. citizen in 2000. She graduated from a private high school and later earned a master's degree in business from the University of San Francisco. Despite fully integrating into American life, her family maintained close cultural and financial ties to China. In the early 2010s, Tiffany managed her family's real estate in California. She was responsible for several properties, including their Hillsborough mansion, which they had bought before moving to the city. Hillsborough View was chosen for its safety, reputation, privacy, and wealthy residents who didn't need to show off. Tiffany's social background, education, and perfect English allowed her to easily fit in with the local upper class. She went to charity events, joined parent groups at private schools, networked with business owners and lawyers. People saw her as a confident and independent woman from a prominent family. Her behavior reflected her dual background. She was reserved, strategic, but also friendly in public, and very disciplined in business. Tiffany was an only child, so she felt immense pressure from her parents. They expected her to inherit the family business, expand it internationally, and secure its future. Tiffany shaped her life around these expectations. She stayed out of trouble, avoided attention, and showed no desire to break free from her family's wealth. Instead, she worked hard to be seen as someone dedicated to protecting and increasing their fortune. Having a dual cultural identity was both beneficial and challenging for her. She was able to leverage the advantages of both Chinese discipline and American adaptability. However, the strong expectations of her family sometimes conflicted with her own desires. This created tension in her romantic relationships, particularly when her partners didn't meet her family's approval. Tiffany started a relationship with Cavé Bayat. Tiffany said this happened after she and Keith had broken up for good. However, others said she was seeing Cavé Bayat while she was still with Keith. When Keith learned about Cavé Bayat, it made his conflict with Tiffany much worse. Cavé Bayat then moved into the house where Keith used to live with his daughters, which Keith felt was a deliberate provocation. Their relationship became even more hostile, with Tiffany and Keith constantly arguing and accusing each other of manipulating the situation. There were also rumors that Keith threatened to reveal damaging information about Tiffany, possibly about her new relationship or business dealings, unless his demands were met. These threats made it impossible for Tiffany and Keith to cooperate in any way. Keith was in a difficult position. He lacked a stable job and home, and struggled to see his daughters regularly. Many people doubted his sincerity. He openly expressed his frustration and desperation, but he remained determined to be part of his daughters' lives. Even as his situation worsened, he stayed in California to be near his children, refusing to move in with family elsewhere. By the end of April 2016, despite appearing to communicate, Keith and Tiffany no longer trusted each other. They saw each other as opponents with conflicting goals. From the very start of the investigation into Keith Green's disappearance, Tiffany Lee was considered a possible person of interest. However, concrete leads only emerged after the interrogation of Olivier Adela, a close associate of Tiffany, and her new partner, Cavé Bayat. Olivier, a former MMA fighter and owner of a transportation company, had initially been hired as a personal trainer and later as a bodyguard. He would become a key figure in revealing the events leading to the crime. During questioning, Olivier confessed in detail to the crime. He admitted he wasn't there when it happened, but knew who did it and how. He said that on the 28th of April, 2016, he followed Tiffany and Keith after they left the Millbury restaurant. Tiffany was driving, with Keith as a passenger. GPS data confirms Olivier's statement that he followed them that night, contrary to Tiffany's original story, that she dropped Keith off somewhere along the way. Olivier stated that she took Keith all the way to her house in Hillsborough. Investigators believe the crime occurred at Tiffany's home. Olivier claims he was driving behind them but didn't participate in the crime, though he knew it was going to happen. Cave Bayet claims he shot Keith in the head with a 9mm handgun in the garage of their home. Blood evidence in the garage and one of the family's cars confirmed Keith was there. After the shooting, the body was put in a vehicle. The following day, Tiffany and Cave asked Olivier to get rid of the body. Olivier agreed because he felt he was already too involved and saw it as repayment for the money, gifts, and loyalty they had given him. He drove the body to a secluded, wooded area in Sonoma County. 2 weeks later, the body was found. Forensic experts determined Keith died somewhere else. The most important part of Olivier's statement was his claim that the crime was planned months beforehand. He stated that Tiffany and Cave had asked him to kill Keith as early as February 2016. When Olivier came to see them, they took his phone and searched him to make sure he wasn't recording them. As a precaution, Olivier said he refused to kill Keith himself but agreed to pressure him, saying he didn't want to go too far. However, he continued to communicate with Tiffany and Cave, assist them in other ways. Later, when they asked him to get rid of the body, he agreed because he felt he couldn't refuse. Investigators confirmed his involvement. Blood matching Keith's DNA was found in the trunk of Olivier's car. Surveillance footage also showed all three moving in sequence, first toward Tiffany's home, then to the remote location where the body was later found. The evidence of premeditation became the backbone of the prosecution's case. The search uncovered messages between Tiffany and Cave indicating they had been working together. The murder weapon itself was never recovered. However, the wound characteristics and trajectory led experts to conclude that a 9mm handgun had been used. Additional, though not conclusive, evidence came from gunpowder residue found in the garage where, according to Olivier, the shot was fired. Olivier's confession formed the basis for arresting all three suspects. His detailed knowledge of the transport of the body and facts only a participant could know proved his active role rather than mere presence at the scene. Olivier's testimony was obtained as part of a preliminary agreement with the district attorney's office. He agreed to cooperate in hopes of reducing his own sentence, an arrangement that would later play a pivotal role in the case. Early in the investigation, authorities believed they had enough proof to determine that Keith Green's death was not accidental or the result of a spontaneous fight. The investigators determined the crime was planned in advance, with each of the three suspects assigned a specific role. Tiffany was initially questioned on May 4th. When asked about the GPS data showing her traveling the same route as Keith on the night of his death, she denied knowing why and maintained that they had separated after dinner. However, investigators already had a different understanding of what happened, and her responses only increased their suspicion that she was hiding something. Around the same time, Cave was also questioned. He denied any involvement, claiming that he was at home on the night Keith went missing. However, his cell phone data placed him in the same area where Tiffany and Keith's movements were recorded, and later near Olivier's residence. He had also been exchanging messages with Tiffany throughout the evening of the 28th of April. This contradicted his version of events and heightened investigators' doubts. On May 26, 2016, Tiffany Lee, Cave Bayet, and Olivier Adela were all arrested. They were charged based on false statements, inconsistencies in their stories, cell phone data, biological evidence, surveillance video, and suspicious messages. However, key pieces of evidence were still missing, such as the murder weapon, a recording of the crime, or a confession from the actual shooter. Despite being charged together, each suspect's legal case progressed separately. Tiffany was the first person granted bail in the case. Prosecutors worried she might leave the country and requested a very high bail amount. Because Tiffany had dual citizenship in the US and China, substantial financial assets, and property in other countries, the court set her bail at an unusually high $35 million. This was one of the largest bail amounts ever in San Mateo County. California law allows a defendant to be released by paying 10% of the bail in cash, with property covering the rest within 2 weeks. Lee's family raised the money by using California real estate as collateral and paying some of the amount in cash. Tiffany was released on June 8, 2016, and was monitored electronically and not allowed to leave the country. The public responded quickly and strongly. Newspapers and social media buzzed with discussions about whether the situation was fair. A wealthy woman, accused of planning a crime in advance, was allowed to go home. Meanwhile, the other 2 defendants stayed in jail. Activists, the victim's family, and people fighting for equal rights claimed this case showed how much better options rich people have compared to everyone else. Articles started to ask if the justice system could ever be truly fair, if being rich could buy your freedom. As the trial approached, the prosecution faced a significant hurdle. They had no direct physical proof linking Tiffany to the crime. Instead, their case relied on circumstantial evidence, including messages, witness statements, traces of blood, but no murder weapon, crime scene video, or Tiffany's fingerprints at the location. Their main task was to present this indirect evidence in a compelling way. The defense attorneys presented a different argument. Tiffany's lawyers claimed the case was based on guesses, not proven facts. They highlighted that Tiffany's DNA wasn't found in the garage where the crime supposedly happened, and there were no fingerprints or a murder weapon linking her to it. They stated that there was no clear evidence connecting her to the crime. They also expressed worry about prejudice, implying that people suspected her because of her ethnicity and wealth. Cave's defense relied on similar arguments: insufficient evidence, no direct link between him and Keith's body, and no trace of his biological material at the suspected crime scene. His lawyers emphasized that simply exchanging text messages with Tiffany could not be equated with carrying out the crime. For Olivier, the strategy was different. His decision to cooperate as a witness strengthened the prosecution's case, but also created a vulnerability. His testimony could be seen as the result of pressure or an attempt to avoid prison time. From the very beginning, even during the initial hearings, it was obvious that the trial would be a major event. The case involved sensitive topics like violent death, family arguments, money, immigration, legal strategies, and unfair social differences, which were sure to attract a lot of public interest. Both the prosecution and defense used all available legal, financial, and media resources to try to win. Under the court's guidance, Tiffany stayed out of the public eye and only communicated through her lawyer's official announcements. Cave and Olivier remained in jail awaiting trial. Although their cases were initially separate, they were combined into one trial. This allowed the prosecutors to present a single, coherent explanation of the crime. The main trial in the Keith Green case began that September in San Mateo County Superior Court. Tiffany and Cave were the defendants, with Olivier's testimony forming the backbone of the prosecution's organized conspiracy theory. According to prosecutors, the motive was Tiffany's desire to eliminate a former partner she saw as a threat to her reputation and financial stability. Olivier's testimony was the most important part of the trial. Under oath, he confirmed Cave and Tiffany's involvement in the alleged plot. However, during cross-examination, the defense exposed inconsistencies. For example, he couldn't clearly explain why, after Keith's death, he first drove home and only later returned for the body. The absence of definitive proof placing him face-to-face with Tiffany and Cave at the moment of the crime was another weakness. Questions also arose regarding Olivier's finances. A search of his home uncovered $30,000 in cash and expensive items, including a watch that had belonged to Keith. Olivier claimed the money came from his work and personal savings. But this explanation was met with skepticism. The defense argued that he could have been more than an accomplice, possibly even the direct perpetrator. Acting alone, the prosecution maintained that the evidence formed a clear chain motive: planning, execution, concealment, and coordinated actions by the participants. The defense countered that not a single piece of physical evidence, no fingerprints, no DNA, no weapon, directly proved Tiffany had committed the crime or was present when it happened. Meanwhile, the court also considered the case of Kaveh Bayat. His defense categorically denied any involvement in the crime. He maintained his innocence, claiming he had been at home at the time of the case. His attorneys argued that the prosecution had not presented a single piece of physical evidence placing him at the scene. After weeks of testimony, the trial reached its decisive stage. The jury now had to decide whether the evidence presented was strong enough to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. After Olivier Adela testified, the murder charges against him were dismissed, and he was freed. However, his freedom didn't last long. As soon as he left the courthouse, federal immigration officers arrested him for violating U.S. immigration laws. A background check revealed that there was no record of American citizenship for someone named Olivier Adela. It turned out his real name was Mustafa Traore, and he had been living in the United States illegally for 20 years using forged documents and a stolen identity. He had fraudulently obtained U.S. citizenship, and much of his life story, including his claimed service in the French Foreign Legion, was false. After his arrest, Mustafa was transferred to a federal detention facility and charged with document fraud and identity theft. Unlike the Keith Green case, this trial attracted little public attention. During the hearings, Mustafa confessed that he had been using a fake name since the early 2000s. He explained to the court that he was forced to leave his country of origin because of traumatic experiences he had as a child. He said that when he was 9 years old, he was stabbed in the face while trying to protect his mother from an abusive attack by soldiers. His family escaped twice, first from Liberia, and then from the Ivory Coast. Mustafa said he changed his name and nationality to begin a new life, escape threats, and build a more secure future for his family. He insisted that he had never used the false identity to commit acts of violence and that his employment in the U.S. had always been legal. The court proceedings focused solely on immigration violations, not on the circumstances of Keith Green's death. Mustafa was found guilty of using forged documents and sentenced to 6 months in prison. The judge took into account his confession, cooperation with law enforcement, lack of a violent criminal record, and his personal history. The judge added that he hoped never to see Mustafa in court again and urged him not to revert to his old ways. This turn of events cast doubt on the reliability of Mustafa's testimony in the Green case. The concealment of his true identity, un invérifiable past, and his role as a witness with clear personal stakes all weakened the prosecution's position. None of the people connected to the events of 2016 ever gave a direct confession to committing the crime. On November 4, 2019, in San Mateo County, a jury found Tiffany Lee and Kaveh Bayat not guilty in the death of Keith Green, despite a 3-year investigation, a widely publicized trial, and extensive testimony. Prosecutors were unable to prove their guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. The verdict shocked Green's family and led to significant media coverage and debate. Many journalists and people believed the verdict showed a serious problem with the justice system. The evidence: blood in a car, secret text messages, matching location data, and testimony from Mustafa made the acquittal seem illogical. However, the defense successfully weakened the prosecution's case by highlighting the lack of clear proof, the questionable nature of the evidence, and the untrustworthiness of a main witness who had lied about who he was. After Kaveh Bayat's acquittal, the district attorney decided not to retry him. Considering the previous verdict and the unlikelihood of a different outcome, they closed the case. While the legal case ended, Keith Green's family struggle continued. Colleen, the mother of Keith, sued Tiffany for emotional distress and financial losses resulting from her son's death. The lawsuit also concerned the future Keith's daughters, The court ruled that Tiffany Lee must pay more than $100,000 in damages. Custody of Keith's daughters was awarded to Tiffany's relatives. Once the case was resolved and her travel restrictions lifted, Tiffany left the United States. Media reports indicated she relocated to China. Her exact location and activities remain unknown, but sources claim she was living in a jurisdiction with no extradition treaty. She has never given an interview and has not publicly revisited the case. The Keith Green case made many people think the American justice system is unfair. News stories compared Green's case to other cases where rich people seem to get away with crimes, like assault or financial fraud. However, unlike other cases, there was no clear evidence to convict Tiffany. For Keith's family, neither public outrage nor a civil judgment could replace the one thing they wanted most: a sense of justice. Keith Green was laid to rest without a definitive answer to the question of who pulled the trigger. And his daughters, who lost their father, were left with memories clouded by unanswered questions. Love triangles have always been one of the deadliest sparks behind domestic crimes. Each person involved carries hidden motives, and from those motives, a web of lies begins to form, so tangled that even the most skilled investigators struggle to find the truth. The death of someone we love is always a tragedy. But in the world of crime, detectives know a painful reality. Even the most convincing tears can be nothing more than a mask, carefully staged to cover guilt. And this is not just theory. It happened in the life of one man whose story shocked an entire community. He had everything: love, friendship, success, and the admiration of those around him. On the surface, his life looked perfect. But beneath that image, dark secrets were brewing, and a deadly trap was being set. That man was Jaime Faith. To friends, he was warm and trustworthy. To neighbors, he embodied the American dream. Yet fate would drag him into a twisted web of passion, betrayal, and murder. A crime so brutal, it left everyone asking, who could want Jaime dead, and why? Stay with us as we uncover how a marriage that seemed built on love turned into a nightmare that ended in bloodshed, deception, and shocking betrayal. Jaime Faith was born in Madison, Wisconsin, on May 11, 1971. After graduating high school in 1994, he immediately pursued a bachelor's degree in computer science at university. He successfully graduated and spent several years working as a software engineer in his hometown, where he was recognized for his professionalism. He was a hardworking individual who frequently informed his family that he did not want to get married or have children. While he had many friends and was generally sociable, Jaime struggled in romantic relationships. However, those who knew him well described him as a decent, family-oriented man, friendly, warm-hearted, and an animal lover. In the fall of 2005, at the age of 34, Jaime traveled to Arizona, where he met Jennifer, a healthcare administrator. They hit it off immediately, talking late into the night, and their relationship quickly blossomed. Jaime moved to Arizona shortly after meeting Jennifer and easily bonded with her 8-year-old daughter, Amber. As their relationship grew, Jaime advanced professionally at American Airlines. Their life together appeared to be flourishing. Jaime has built a good relationship with both Jennifer and Amber. Treating the girl like a daughter, he contrasted sharply with Jennifer's previous partner, Amber's biological father, who had abandoned her when he learned of the pregnancy. Jennifer described her former partner as abusive and cruel, often instilling fear in her. After years together, Jaime and Jennifer decided to marry in Las Vegas in the summer of 2012. By 2017, they had been together for 12 years, of which 5 were as a married couple. Jaime landed a new high-level position at American Airlines, which required them to move from Arizona to Texas. They settled in Dallas and began building a new home in the Oak Cliff area of California, just 11 kilometers from the city, which Jaime believed was the perfect place to live. They are loved by the community, often hosting barbecues for the neighbors. Jaime remained a hard-working and kind person who enjoyed walking his dog each day. By October 2020, Jaime and Jennifer had been married for 8 years and had lived in their home for over 3 years. They celebrated their 15th anniversary since meeting with a special dinner on October 8. The next morning, Friday, October 9, 2020, Jaime, now 49, was preparing for work around 7:30 a.m. He took his beloved dog for a short walk, which was part of his daily routine. On this morning, however, an unforeseen tragedy awaited him. In the usually quiet neighborhood, there were few people out, and their house had security cameras that captured Jaime and Jennifer leaving with the dog. Unbeknownst to them, this walk would mark the final moments of Jaime's life. A black pickup truck was parked on the opposite side of the road when a stranger wearing a blue mask suddenly got out. He quickly raised a gun and aimed it at Jaime Faith. Everything happened in an instant. Jaime barely had time to react and was caught off guard. The assailant fired a pistol, emptying the magazine. Out of 9 shots, 7 bullets struck Jaime. After the gunshots rang out, women's screams echoed throughout the area. Neighbors from nearby homes ran out and saw Jennifer standing next to Jaime, looking horrified. Instead of fleeing, the attacker targeted Jennifer next. He knocked her to the ground, bound her wrists with duct tape, and attempted to remove her wedding ring. Their dog attacked the attacker, but he quickly fought back. By this time, several neighbors had gathered, watching the harrowing scene unfold. When the attacker noticed the witnesses, he stopped his assault, jumped back into his black pickup truck, and sped away. Meanwhile, multiple residents called the local police to report the incident. Emergency vehicles arrived quickly, but it was too late. Medics pronounced Jaime dead at the scene. He had been hit 3 times in the face, 3 times in the chest, and once in the stomach. He bled to death within minutes, and the autopsy later revealed that half of his wounds were fatal, indicating that the assailant was likely skilled with firearms, possibly having a military or law enforcement background. Jaime lost his life on October 9, 2020, just 10 meters from his front door, sending shockwaves through the neighborhood. Forensic teams began examining the area immediately. While detectives started gathering details about the incident, Jennifer, although largely unharmed, was in shock and received medical attention. The tape used to bind her wrists was sent for analysis. Despite not suffering physical harm, the community was concerned for Jennifer, who had witnessed her husband's murder. Through her tears, she spoke to the police, describing her attacker as a man in a blue mask, who opened fire on Jaime without warning. After running out of bullets, he tied her hands and forcibly took her wedding ring before fleeing in his truck. Most houses in the area were equipped with surveillance cameras, and neighbors were willing to share footage with the police. Although they couldn't identify the shooter, the truck was of particular interest. Even though the license plate was not visible, the make was recognizable, and a distinctive letter T on the rear window resembled the emblem of the Texas Rangers baseball team. When asked about anyone she knew who might be a fan, Jennifer struggled to recall. In her grief, Jennifer appeared on television, pleading for the killer to turn himself in. Later, she returned to the police station for further questioning. She broke down in tears and had difficulty communicating but then calmed down and provided more information. She noted she could see the killer's dark eyes through the mask and described his clothing and the sequence of the attack. After he bound her hands with tape, he hit her in the face, a detail corroborated by witnesses who had rushed to the scene. All that remained on Jennifer's body was a small abrasion. Jennifer insisted that the attack appeared to be an attempted robbery. However, there were several inconsistencies with this theory, particularly regarding the timing and the attacker's behavior. The suspect did not appear to be trying to conceal his actions, making it unlikely that this was a standard robbery. This raised questions about his true intentions. The police found it hard to believe that he would spontaneously choose to rob a couple while driving through a residential area, especially since they were just taking a walk with their dog. The attacker appeared overly prepared and unafraid, suggesting that his main target was Jaime, while the attempted theft of the ring and assault on Jennifer might have been a cover for his real motives. After the attacker shot Jaime, it seemed clear that he had a personal motive, especially since he didn't shoot Jennifer. As a result, Jennifer was re-interrogated. It was suggested that Jaime had made a dangerous enemy, though their identity remained unknown. Jennifer explained that she and Jaime had been happy together and celebrated their 15th anniversary just a day before his death, which was a joyous occasion for them. She described Jaime as a loving and calm person, making it hard to believe he had such a serious adversary. Following this, she and her daughter, Amber, set up a GoFundMe page to seek financial assistance for the funeral. As a housewife, Jennifer was facing significant financial challenges. The initiative quickly gained support, raising over $60,000 in a short time. Neighbors also helped by providing food. Jennifer shared her harrowing experience with the media, expressing hope that the killer would be caught soon. With the funds, she organized 2 funeral services for Jaime, one in Dallas and another in Phoenix. Meanwhile, detectives were diligently working to find the perpetrator. They discovered .45 caliber shell casings at the crime scene, along with Scotch tape and bullets removed from Jaime's body, which were sent for analysis. Review of surveillance footage was prioritized. They found a video taken a few hours before the attack, showing an unknown man walking near the fence of Jaime's home and appearing to survey the area. His attire closely matched that of the man who later shot Jaime and attacked Jennifer. His suspicious behavior led detectives to rule out the possibility of an accidental shooting. He clearly had an interest in Jaime's family, raising questions about his connection to them. In their search for clues, detectives requested Jennifer's mobile phone and her husband Jaime's phone. While Jaime's phone contained no significant information, suggesting he had no known conflicts, Jennifer's phone contained a suspicious text message sent weeks before the murder. In that message, she talked about a man named Darren, and the context suggested that their relationship was more than just casual friends. When contacted, this friend confirmed that they had heard about the possibility that Jennifer was romantically involved with someone else, but did not provide any further details. Law enforcement wanted to learn more about Darren Lopez, a 48-year-old Army veteran who had served in Iraq and Afghanistan. At the time of the murder, he was divorced and living alone on a farm in Cumberland Furnace, Tennessee, a small community, nearly 1,000 kilometers from Dallas. It raised questions when investigators discovered that Jennifer had been discussing Darren shortly before Jaime's death. They decided to explore the connection between Darren and Jennifer. It turned out that Darren and Jennifer were not just acquaintances. They had dated in high school and attended prom together. They continued their relationship into college until Darren's military service interrupted it. By that time, they had even talked about marriage. But they hadn't seen each other for decades, since their youth. After leaving the military in 2017 and subsequently divorcing his wife, Darren found himself isolated on his farm. He struggled to connect with his 4 children due to his military duties, which included a traumatic incident where he sustained a serious head injury from a bomb explosion. He became increasingly withdrawn and suffered from depression and post-traumatic stress disorder, worsened by financial struggles. To combat his loneliness, Darren started reconnecting with old friends online, including Jennifer. By late 2020, he reached out to her for the first time, and they quickly began chatting multiple times a day. Their conversations started off casually, reminiscing about the past. After about a month, Darren expressed that he had always cared for Jennifer, and she seemed to reciprocate his feelings. Their discussions became more personal, including sharing photos and talking about a potential future together on his farm, which raised suspicions among investigators. Detectives then noticed Darren's black Nissan pickup truck was the same make and model as the vehicle seen in CCTV footage near the crime scene. Alarmingly, the day before the murder, on October 8, 2020, Darren informed his family that he was going hunting. He drove 1,000 kilometers to Dallas in just 12 hours, which was verified by his car's navigation system and traffic cameras. He arrived in Oak Cliff early on the morning of October 9. After comparing photos, investigators found that Darren closely resembled a man seen looking through the fence at Jaime's home. During the 7 months prior, Darren and Jennifer communicated regularly, exchanging over 40,000 text messages and hundreds of hours of phone calls. However, Jennifer had deleted this data from her phone, making it difficult for investigators to retrieve it. While Darren's phone retained all the information, detectives continued to delve into their relationship, which appeared increasingly relevant to the case. Notably, just 28 hours after Jaime's murder, Jennifer and Darren met. Alarmingly, Jennifer sent Darren a text warning him that the police were suspicious and that they had obtained a description of him and his vehicle. She advised him to remove a decal of his favorite baseball team, which he did promptly. Before meeting Darren, detectives spoke with people who knew him. Many immediately confirmed that he had been driving with the sticker for a long time, but it had disappeared after the shooting of Jaime. The police arranged to meet Darren after discovering he owned a registered .45 caliber pistol. They executed a search warrant and found the weapon, which was sent for ballistics testing, as well as a blue mask matching eyewitness descriptions. Further analysis confirmed that this gun was used to shoot Jaime. In Darren's car, they also found several credit cards belonging to Jennifer. After reviewing the transactions, it became evident that Jennifer had been financially supporting Darren for a long time. She also bought him expensive electronic devices, a plane ticket, so he could go on vacation with the children, and asked him not to refuse anything. It emerged that Jennifer had misused funds raised on GoFundMe to support Darren and had not paid for Jaime's funeral, leaving the debt in her name. This revelation shocked the public, leading GoFundMe to offer refunds to donors once they learned of Jennifer's deceit. Darren Lopez was arrested on January 11, 2021, while playing tennis at home, and he was charged with first-degree murder. When questioned, Jennifer denied any involvement in the crime. However, her actions suggested she was more cunning than Darren. Despite being caught in lies, after Jaime's death, she distanced herself from others and refused to comment about her connection to Darren, contrasting sharply with her previous emotional interviews. Despite Darren's arrest, Jennifer continued to communicate with him, using a third party to send messages to him in prison. Several of these messages were intercepted, revealing her declarations of love for him and her commitment to support him. This behavior raised suspicions among detectives that she may have played a role in planning the crime, especially since Jaime held a life insurance policy worth $628,000, of which Jennifer was the sole beneficiary. Notably, this policy was issued only months before his death. While Darren was in custody, investigators seized Jennifer's cell phone, computer, and laptop, further corroborating their suspicions of her involvement in the murder plot. They discovered that she had created a fake account to communicate with Darren in order to confuse the investigation. She misled Darren with stories of ongoing abuse from Jaime, claiming he had physically harmed her and her daughter. She sends Darren pictures of injuries allegedly caused by Jaime, attempting to stir up hatred towards Jaime and justify her actions. Detectives looked into these statements, but none of Jaime's friends confirmed that he was abusive. They described Jaime as a friendly and peaceful person. Jaime's family was bewildered by these allegations and vehemently denied them. They did not understand why Jennifer stayed with Jaime for 15 years if she believed he was an abuser. Darren received photos through a fake account that Jennifer claimed were of her injuries. None of the photos showed her face, and she had not reported any incidents of domestic violence to the police. Some of the images were publicly accessible online, and her computer's search history showed she had looked them up. This was all part of a manipulation intended to convince Darren to kill Jaime. Even in prison, Darren believed Jennifer's lies until his lawyer presented evidence proving the photos were fake. Amber, Jennifer's daughter, also stated that Jaime had never harmed her. Darren was devastated to learn he had killed an innocent person, which destroyed his family. Fortunately, Darren started to speak out. He shared that in August 2020, he met Jennifer in person, and there, she asked him to kill Jaime. They carefully planned the attack, with Jennifer devising the main scenario. He executed the plan but arrived in Dallas earlier than expected. which led to him being captured on surveillance cameras near Jaime's house. Jennifer was arrested in February 2021, just a month after Darren. She was initially charged with obstructing justice, but faced first-degree murder and solicitation of murder charges by September 2021. She denied her guilt and asserted that Darren was motivated by jealousy. However, the accumulating evidence against her led to her facing the death penalty. After months in jail, Jennifer decided to tell the truth when offered a plea deal that would reduce her sentence to life in prison for incitement to murder. She confessed that her accusations against Jaime about abuse were false, bringing relief to his family, who wanted to clear his name. On February 22, 2022, Jennifer Faith was sentenced to life in prison without parole as part of the deal. Following this, other men who had been involved with Jennifer spoke out, including Rick, who had dated her before Jaime. He recognized her manipulative nature, remembering how she had falsely accused Jaime of abuse while attempting to persuade him to take out a life insurance policy. Realizing the danger he had escaped, Rick described Jennifer as the most evil and greedy person he knew. In June 2023, Darren Lopez's trial began. Unlike Jennifer, he maintained his innocence, claiming he was manipulated by her. Evidence presented included false photos and statements alleging abuse by Jaime. Darren claimed he wanted to help Jennifer escape her troubled life, asserting that their relationship was purely friendly. His lawyer cited his post-traumatic stress disorder and a head injury from the Iraq War as contributing factors. The judge responded to the defense by stating that killing Jaime was unnecessary. Darren could have contacted law enforcement, who would have investigated the situation. He considered other options, suggesting that Jennifer run away with him, but she insisted that Jaime would keep pursuing her. Under her pressure, Darren ultimately agreed to eliminate Jaime. Attempts by Darren and his attorney to portray him as a victim were unsuccessful. At 51 years old, Darren was sentenced to 6 years in prison, with the possibility of parole in 2051. On the surface, Meline Kingsbury's life seems perfect. A devoted mother to her 2 young children, a rising young professional with a promising career, and an image of stability that many admire. But sometimes, what shines brightest hides deep cracks. Behind her gentle smile and familiar routine, Meline is battling a silent storm: fear, exhaustion, and a dangerous stress that comes from the man she once trusted most, the father of her children. On the morning of March 31, 2023, the storm is no longer metaphorical. It rages. Meline disappears without a trace. Her phone is still on the table. Her wallet is intact. Her plans are unfinished. The most terrifying thing is that she never returned to pick up her child. A seemingly random disappearance quickly spirals out of control into a much darker tale. A tale of hidden secrets, lingering suspicions, and chilling truths. Come with us, as the truth about Meline's disappearance is not only shocking and haunting, but also touches on the deepest fears of every family. What happened to Meline in 2023 stunned the nation. But to fully understand the gravity of this tragedy, we need to go back in time, to look at the girl from the beginning, the life she built, the dream she held, and the quiet strength that shaped Meline Kingsbury. Meline Kingsbury was born on June 1, 1996, in Minnesota, and was the youngest of 3 siblings. She always stood out among her peers for her outgoing nature, energy, and curiosity about the world. Growing up in Farmington, she was surrounded by love and support. Even after her parents' divorce and their subsequent remarriages, the warmth of her extended family continued. After graduating high school in 2014, Meline enrolled at Winona State University to study health sciences. She quickly became known as a bright, dedicated student, respected by her classmates and trusted by professors. By age 26, she had built a stable life with a clear sense of purpose, a reliable career, and big dreams for the future. Her achievements were a testament to her resilience and quiet strength, demonstrating that a person can maintain their inner light even amid hardship. While at university, Meline met Adam Fravel. Although they never married, they moved in together and started a family, welcoming a daughter and then a son. Initially, their relationship appeared strong, with Adam seemingly supportive of Madeline's ambitions. When their daughter was born, he paused his own work and education to help her complete her studies, which many interpreted as a commitment to their partnership. However, after their second child was born, things began to change. Tensions at home rose, causing Adam to lose his job. This meant that Meline became the sole financial provider, working full-time as a clinical research coordinator at Mayo Clinic, while pursuing a master's degree at the University of Minnesota. She also took on the primary caregiver role for their 5-year-old daughter and 2-year-old son. Despite the increasing pressure, Meline managed her responsibilities. Although her family noted that Adam was minimally involved in caring for the children, those close to her observed that every household duty, from childcare to daily tasks, fell solely on her. She often expressed feeling overwhelmed and isolated within her relationship. Adam's relatives acknowledged that he lacked initiative in their partnership and was unwilling to share responsibilities equally. As tensions escalated, Adam's behavior took a concerning turn. He became increasingly controlling, monitoring who Meline communicated with, asking to see her messages, and displaying jealousy when she interacted with other men. Over time, his behavior allegedly morphed into psychological manipulation and, as later revealed, physical aggression. These troubling incidents were kept hidden from public view, only known to Medeline's closest friends and family. Her loved ones remarked that she didn't initially understand the severity of her situation and was still hoping to maintain harmony for the sake of her children. Meline attempted to negotiate a compromise with Adam, but then he crossed a serious boundary. He reportedly threatened her by referencing the high-profile case of Gabby Petito, allegedly saying that if she didn't start doing what he said, she would end up like Gabby. Friends and family who heard this warning urged Meline to inform the authorities, but she hesitated. She feared that if Adam were arrested, it could emotionally harm their son and daughter. Despite the danger, she believed it was important for her children to maintain a relationship with him. She worried that police intervention might make the situation worse, so she did not report the threat, prioritizing connection with her children over personal safety. Meline decided to separate from Adam for good. Just before she disappeared, she informed him that she no longer intended to move closer to his parents as they had planned. She realized it was better for the family to stay in Winona, near daycare, her job, and her support network. At that point, her relationship with Adam was effectively over, even though they still shared the same home. Despite the turmoil, Meline worked to keep things normal and made future plans. She scheduled a meeting with her sister on the 1st of April to drop off her daughter, which was significant to her, and she intended to follow through. Those close to her later noted that when she was unwell or overwhelmed, Adam never helped. He often isolated himself in another room, ignoring their son's cries and the chaos around the house. He demonstrated a lack of interest in addressing their problems, avoided stable employment, and did not commit to unclear career plans. Adam remained in the home, relied on Medeline's income, and acted as if their situation hadn't changed. His indifference seemed deliberate rather than temporary. This growing emotional disconnect was a major factor in Medeline's decision to leave the relationship. Their situation reached a breaking point during this period of silent tension, as what had once seemed like temporary setbacks turned permanent. As their relationship further deteriorated, Adam's behavior became more controlling. His jealousy extended to constant intrusions into Medeline's personal life, as he insisted on seeing her text messages, particularly those involving other men. This became a regular part of their conversations. Although Meline tried to avoid confrontation, she felt her personal space constricting. Every message and conversation sparked suspicion. Adam demanded that she reveal her private chats, and when she hesitated, he reacted aggressively, Adam's control extended to her online activities, monitoring who she added on social media, what posts she liked, and whom she talked to in messaging apps. He had previously exhibited physical aggression, including an incident when Meline was on a video call with a friend while holding their son. He suddenly struck her across the face without warning. Her friend witnessed this live and later reported it to the authorities, noting that she had visible bruises and marks. When asked about her situation, Meline often expressed fear, saying things like that if she left, he might do something terrible to her. Meline's parents had similar worries. After a call from her seeking help during a conflict, they picked her up along with her children to keep them safe at their home, hoping she wouldn't return to a dangerous situation. However, just 3 days later, Meline decided to go back. Believing it was important for her children to have stability, they were confused by the situation, and she wanted to maintain their sense of normalcy. The pressure of ensuring her safety and her children's made it challenging for her to make a final decision. Despite the advice of friends and family, she hesitated to act. While the situation worsened, Adam's control over her increased, making Meline feel as though she was being watched even at home. She confided in her sister about how Adam would follow her around, monitoring her conversations and phone use. As the date of her disappearance approached, Meline lost any illusions about her situation. Her effort to leave the relationship quietly while still allowing her children access to their father ended up complicating things. What started as a careful plan to regain her freedom ultimately led to a tragedy. Before the incident, Meline had reconnected with Spencer Sullivan, a former college classmate, and their relationship gradually blossomed. Although they weren't living together and kept it discreet, Meline's close friends knew about it. During the investigation, it emerged that they did not have any formal arrangements. However, Adam's reaction to this development was intense. He forbade Meline from talking to Spencer when he was around and expressed his anger about their interactions. Meline felt she needed to keep these changes secret, as Adam perceived any independence as a threat. Meline was very careful about sharing her plans to move, telling only a very trusted group of people. She even requested that her mother and sister not discuss it openly. Fearing that any slip could reach Adam, Spencer respected her decisions and, after Meline's disappearance, fully cooperated with law enforcement, providing an alibi that was confirmed and showing no evidence of involvement in the incident. Nevertheless, the fact that he was part of Meline's life intensified the tension at home, as Adam sensed he was losing control. By early spring 2023, Meline had reached a pivotal moment. She felt ready to leave her past behind and start anew. While her loved ones were not surprised by her decision to leave Adam, she wanted to keep it private until the timing felt right. Her apprehension about Adam's reaction was not unfounded. She didn't trust him. This is why she kept her plans to leave tightly under wraps until the last moment. Her choice to leave quietly was the result of her prolonged internal battle. She was prepared for a fresh start and was on the verge of making it happen. On Friday morning, March 31, 2023, Meline went about her daily routine. She dropped the children off at daycare with Adam. Surveillance cameras recorded them arriving at around 8:00 a.m. Taking the children inside and returning home, Adam said Meline planned to work a little before heading to the office. He claimed he didn't see her again after that. The last confirmed contact from Meline was a message to her sister Megan at 8:15 a.m., in which she made a lighthearted comment about a photo they had discussed the night before. After that, there was no further communication. No texts, no returned calls. This silence raised immediate concerns for their mother, Krista Hultgren. She attempted to call Meline multiple times but received no answer. Growing apprehensive, she contacted Megan to see if she had heard from Meline. Megan confirmed their brief exchange that morning, but mentioned she hadn't heard anything since. She began texting Meline too, but received no response. In their family, it was unusual for anyone to go quiet without explanation, as Meline was usually very attentive to her children and committed to staying in touch. Realizing the situation was serious, Megan knew she had to act quickly. Even though she was in another city and couldn't go to Madeline's house. She called Kate, a close friend of Madeline's who lived nearby, and asked her to check on Meline. Kate agreed and went over. When she arrived, she saw Madeline's minivan parked in the garage, which worried her. Since the car was there but Meline wasn't responding, it indicated something was wrong. Kate knocked on the door but received no reply. The lights were off inside, and there were no signs of activity. She tried calling Meline several times, but there was still no response. This led Kate to quickly realize something was wrong. She contacted the Winona Police Department to request a welfare check. Kate explained Medeline's unavailability throughout the day and mentioned the ongoing tension with Adam. Around 8:20 p.m., an officer arrived at Medeline's home. The officer checked the outside, knocked on the door, and peered through the windows. The minivan remained parked, but nobody answered the door. There were no signs of forced entry or disturbances inside. The officer contacted both Medeline's family and Adam. Her partner, Adam, stated he hadn't seen Meline since that morning and noted she missed picking up the kids from daycare. He picked them up himself and drove them to his parents' house in Mabel, about an hour away. He didn't seem overly worried and hadn't reported her as missing. Despite the circumstances, the police decided not to file a missing persons report immediately. According to local procedures, they needed to wait 24 hours from the last contact before officially opening a case. This decision left Medeline's family feeling frustrated and confused. They emphasized that her behavior was out of character and that something serious might be wrong. But no exceptions to protocol were made. The first night after Meline went missing was filled with uncertainty for her family. They had no updates or confirmed clues about her whereabouts. Friends and coworkers were also unaware of her location, and her phone was silent. Attempts to call or track her activity were unsuccessful, leading to the unsettling conclusion that she had not simply stepped away, but had vanished without a trace. Once Meline was officially reported missing, the police began taking statements, quickly focusing on Adam Fravel. According to his account, on the morning of the 31st of March, after dropping off their children at daycare, he and Meline returned home. He claimed Meline stayed home for a work meeting while he began packing to move to his parents' house. He said that he planned to transport some boxes to Mabel and some other boxes to the storage room, and he had taken Medeline's minivan, leaving his car for her. He said he left the house, stopped at a gas station, then returned to load more boxes before heading toward Mabel. During the trip, he realized he had packed boxes meant for storage by mistake. So he turned around and headed back to Winona. He claimed he was on the road from about 10:30 a.m. to noon. When he got home, he stated that his car was still in the driveway, but Meline was missing, which didn't overly concern him since he assumed she had gone to work. Later, he picked up the kids from daycare and went to his parents' house to spend the day. Investigators began reviewing surveillance footage from the neighborhood, and even at this early stage, inconsistencies in Adam's story emerged. A camera from a nearby house recorded him at 9:44 a.m. walking up to Medeline's minivan and removing its license plate. A few minutes later, he put a different plate on it. By 9:55 a.m., he got into the minivan, and at exactly 10 o'clock a.m., it drove out of the driveway. At 10:02 a.m., the van was captured on camera at a nearby gas station. After that, it was seen at various points along Highway 43 heading south toward Mabel. However, contrary to Adam's claims, no cameras in Mabel recorded the van's arrival. Following a long period with no surveillance sightings, the van reappeared in footage around 1:28 p.m. back in Winona. Returning to the driveway, the gap between 11:59 a.m. and 1:28 p.m. was unexplained, with no cameras capturing the van or Adam during that time. This raised significant concerns that the vehicle had been in a remote location where it could have been concealed. When investigators questioned Adam again, he struggled to explain why he swapped the license plates, why his travel route didn't match the camera footage, or why his phone's GPS didn't show any record of the trip. It was later revealed that the day before Meline disappeared, Adam had turned off location tracking on all his accounts, including several Gmail addresses, and deactivated the home's security camera system. Even more suspiciously, the surveillance system at his parents' house, where he later took the kids, had been completely wiped. During the search of the house, investigators found that parts of the security system were physically removed, and the memory cards were missing. Adam couldn't clearly explain why this happened right around the time of Madeline's disappearance. He said it was part of preparations for a move, but given the circumstances, this explanation didn't make sense. Detectives suspected he was trying to erase any visual evidence of his actions. Increased concern arose from Adam's behavior after Meline went missing. He did not participate in search efforts, showed no initiative in gathering information, avoided public statements, and distanced himself from the volunteers. Later, he claimed law enforcement advised him to stay away, a statement that officials later denied. These actions, removing security footage, switching license plates, disabling GPS tracking, painted a concerning picture. By this point in the investigation, it was clear that Adam's behavior did not align with that of a person genuinely worried about the disappearance of the mother of his children. While no charges had been filed yet, the investigation increasingly focused on him. On the 1st of April, 2023, police conducted a second search of the home Adam shared with Meline. Her belongings were still there, indicative of her not leaving voluntarily. Her coffee cup and plate remained on the kitchen counter. Her jacket, the same one seen in daycare cameras that morning, hung in the hallway. Her phone and purse were still in their usual places. These details indicated that Meline had not left the house on her own. She would not have gone to work or anywhere else without essential items for communication and work. Staff at the Mayo Clinic, where she was expected to work that day, confirmed she did not show up. Investigators also focused on the garage, discovering that Adam had once again changed the license plates on the minivan the evening before. By the time police arrived, he had reinstalled the original plates. Though surveillance cameras had recorded the earlier switch, this indicated a deliberate effort to conceal movements or delay identification. While the search showed no visible signs of a struggle or blood, forensic teams noted signs of a potential cleanup. In the outside trash bin, they found partially burned fragments of plastic and electronic components. Later analysis suggested these could be remnants of a laptop. Another troubling discovery was a mattress in one of the bedrooms. It had no sheets and displayed stains that were sent for testing. Investigators later searched Adam's parents' home, where they found several discarded electronic devices and remnants of what seemed to be a fire pit. Forensic specialists believed that a laptop casing might have been destroyed in the fire. Nearby was Adam's truck, and in the bed, there was a garden shovel. A neighbor with outdoor cameras provided footage to the police. After Madeline's disappearance, Adam was seen driving that same truck, with the shovel visible in the back. Cadaver detection dogs, trained to recognize human scent, were brought in. Both the shovel and the truck bed triggered alerts from the dogs. Adam's family claimed that his father had used the shovel to bury a deceased animal on the property a few days earlier. However, experts noted that the dogs could differentiate between human and animal scents, and their alerts suggested the presence of human biological traces. Adam was called in for more questioning, and investigators noticed fresh scratches on his face and neck. He explained they were caused by animals or workout equipment, but this did not convince the detectives. A medical evaluation indicated that the scratches looked more like defensive wounds from a physical fight rather than accidents. Each new piece of evidence fueled suspicions against Adam. His behavior didn't align with that of someone genuinely worried about a loved one. He had not reported Meline missing, did not participate in search efforts, and showed little interest in addressing the evidence against him. Medeline's belongings that were left behind, deleted digital records, attempts to destroy electronic devices, possible cleanup efforts, and suspicious behavior all pointed to a troubling conclusion. The house, which seemed calm and normal from the outside, became the focus of the investigation, revealing more than any words could. On June 7, 2023. The case took a significant turn when a woman's body was found in an old well in a wooded area of rural Houston County. This discovery came from a targeted search effort, which included analyzing the routes Adam took on the day Meline disappeared. The body was wrapped in a plain white bedsheet and tightly secured with layers of tape. Investigators also discovered pieces of a gray towel and a fabric pillow cover, which were bundled to reduce odor and delay detection. The well's location was carefully selected. However, it was abandoned, difficult to access, and not directly linked to the Adam family, though it was later confirmed that the land had connections to them. After identifying the body through DNA and distinct features, Adam Fravel was arrested without resistance. He faced charges of second-degree intentional homicide with aggravating factors of premeditation and extreme cruelty. Prosecutors presented evidence collected over more than 2 months. Detectives found that the bedsheet in the well matched the linens from the couple's shared bedroom, while the towel and pillowcase matched a set in a hallway closet. Partial fingerprints on the tape matched Adam's. Additionally, microscopic fibers on the fabric matched particles from Meline's minivan. Investigators suggested the crime was motivated by a need for control. Adam felt he was losing Meline as she planned to move out and start a new relationship, disrupting the life he was accustomed to. Financial motives also played a role, as Meline had a life insurance policy that would benefit Adam in the event of her death. Lastly, her leaving would mean shared parenting duties, removing his leverage over her. Experts concluded that Meline died from asphyxiation, and the absence of struggle at the body location indicated the crime likely happened elsewhere, probably at her home. Psychological experts pointed out that such crimes are often committed by someone close to the victim, typically culminating from ongoing conflict, where violence is used as a last effort to regain control. After Adam Fravel's arrest, he refused to assist law enforcement. During questioning, he avoided direct inquiries, claiming he was tired or confused about the events. He did not confess to any wrongdoing. However, during preliminary hearings, the court concluded there was enough evidence to move forward with a full criminal trial. The judge mandated that he be held in custody without bail. 68 days after Meline went missing, critical truths began to surface through confirmed information. Initial fears and speculations evolved into concrete evidence, while nothing could bring Meline back. The investigation achieved its primary goal, uncovering what happened and identifying those responsible. With Adam in custody, the case progressed to the next difficult phase: the legal pursuit of justice. The accusations were based on various types of evidence, including objects found in his house, the connection between the discoveries in the well and his belongings, testimonies from witnesses, analyses from experts, along with a detailed history of his relationship with Meline. All of these factors combined to form a convincing narrative. During the preliminary hearings, Adam continued to deny any connection to the events. He claimed ignorance about how Meline's body ended up in the well and maintained that he would never harm her. His defense tried to question the investigation's validity, hinting at possible errors or misunderstandings. But public sentiment largely favored the prosecution. Amid these legal issues, Meline's family was engaged in a separate personal struggle. They sought custody of Meline's son and daughter, aiming to protect them from the influence of a father who is now facing serious criminal allegations. On November 7, 2024, a judge in Winona sentenced Adam Fravel, 30, for the murder of Meline Kingsbury. Meline's story serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of recognizing and addressing domestic abuse warning signs seriously. In Minnesota and beyond, people mobilized for change, starting foundations and holding demonstrations to prevent similar tragedies from occurring. The police officers entering the apartment were struck by a strong smell of antiseptic. Inside, they found the body of a young woman on the floor. She had been badly abused. Her head was shaved. Her face was bruised. She was missing teeth, and her skin has many burns. The surrounding room was suspiciously clean, suggesting this was not a natural death. All the evidence indicated a violent attack and a subsequent attempt to clean up the scene. This was the beginning of one of the most shocking criminal cases in Malaysia's recent history. A case where the victim remained invisible until the very end, and the offenders had long been seen as respected members of society. Etika Siti Nurashikin Mode, Sulong and Mohammed Ambre Yunus resided in a high-end residential area in Penampang, Kota Kinabalu, the capital of Sabah. Their house and appearance were unremarkable. They were perceived by their neighbors as a rich, polite, and caring family, with 3 children. They often spoke about their twin sons, who had autism, presenting themselves as loving and devoted parents. In 2012, Etika became famous throughout Malaysia after reaching the finals of MasterChef Malaysia Season 2. People who watched the show liked her calm personality, confidence, friendly smile, and graceful behavior, which made her very popular. Even after the show was over, she stayed popular, and people continued to see her as a well-mannered, educated woman. Outside of television, she had an impressive professional background. She graduated from the University of Toronto with a degree in mining engineering and worked as an engineer for Petroleum Nasional Berhad, one of Malaysia's largest state-owned companies. This provided her with both a stable income and a respected standing in her field. Her husband, Mohammed, was a contractor who worked with the local government on construction and technical projects. In professional circles, he was considered reliable and efficient. Though not a public figure, he was known as a man of action whose business connections secured the family's comfortable lifestyle. They seemed like a stable, respectable, and ideal family. The mother was smart, the father was rich, and their sons were well cared for. They actively used social media to share happy family moments and participated in charity, especially supporting neurodiversity and young people with special needs. Their appearance convinced everyone, friends, neighbors, and online followers, that everything was fine. For a long time, this public image worked flawlessly, serving both as a shield against unwanted questions and as a way to build trust within the community. At the time, no one understood that a much more sinister truth lay hidden beneath the carefully constructed surface. Nur Afia Daing Damin was born poor and immediately faced the challenges of being a woman forced to find work in another country. Like many Southeast Asian women who migrate for work, she left her rural home seeking a stable income and was prepared to accept difficult working conditions. However, her situation was especially complex. Even her nationality was uncertain. One source says Nur was from Bulukumba, a city on the Indonesian island of Sulawesi. Her husband, Askari, told a British news source this. This idea is supported by claims that she was Bugis, an ethnic group present in both Indonesia and Malaysia, but conflicting details quickly surfaced. Indonesia's foreign ministry said they had no official proof she was an Indonesian citizen. Also, Malaysian documents related to the case didn't clear things up. Although the documents indicated she might be Malaysian, neither Indonesia nor Malaysia accepted responsibility for protecting her. This uncertain legal status created significant problems for her. Because she wasn't officially recognized as an Indonesian citizen, the Indonesian embassy wasn't required to help her. Furthermore, Malaysia didn't consider her a vulnerable migrant needing protection. Another reason Nur felt isolated was because she was far from her family. She lived an 8-hour drive away from her husband and had trouble communicating with him. People later said they hadn't been in contact for months. Furthermore, her employers held her important documents, like her ID card. This prevented her from traveling or getting assistance. As a foreign domestic worker, Nur did not enjoy the rights and protections afforded to citizens, or even guests. This vulnerability significantly impacted her situation. At the time of the incident, Nur worked as a housekeeper for Etika and Mohammed. She lived in their apartment. She was the only adult in the apartment who was not related to the family. In Malaysia, domestic workers are tied to a single employer. Their visa and work permit are specifically linked to that employer, making it illegal to change jobs without the employer's permission. If a worker complains or leaves without consent, they risk losing their legal status and being deported. This system can leave workers vulnerable to abuse, as they have limited avenues for seeking help. Often, the workers' living and working conditions within the employer's home are not monitored or questioned by others. While officially employed by a seemingly reputable family, the worker may be isolated, unable to communicate freely, and lacking proper legal protection. Noor wasn't sent to the store or allowed to go out with the family's sons. Her being constantly at home became normal, and no one suspected anything wrong. On the 13th of December, 2021, Atika and Mohammed walked into the Kota Kinabalu police station. They claimed they had just returned from a trip and found their housekeeper unresponsive. From the very first minutes, officers on duty were uneasy about the couple's behavior. Their accounts sounded rehearsed, and their emotions appeared unnatural. They claimed they didn't see anything strange occurring in their house. They spoke of the victim as if they were a family member, voiced worry, and stated they desired to know what happened. The investigative team immediately went to the scene, but it didn't match Atika and Mohammed's story. The advanced state of decomposition indicated she had died days earlier, casting serious doubt on their version of events. Forensic experts estimated the death had occurred several days before their arrival at the station. Early lab results supported this timeline. Further suspicion arose when officers noted that the victim's head had been shaved and she was found without clothing. These circumstances couldn't be explained by natural causes or any genuine attempt at medical aid. More likely, they were deliberate actions meant to alter her appearance and conceal evidence. When questioned, both Atika and Mohammed rigidly stuck to the same phrasing, never deviating from their original script, which only heightened suspicion. Police initiated their arrest on suspicion of providing false statements and tampering with a potential crime scene. Forensic examination results showed that Nurafia Dongdamen suffered 8 soft tissue injuries to her mouth, injuries to 6 incisors, including the left central incisor and left lateral incisor, showed signs of being clamped. The gums were lacerated, indicating that the injuries occurred close to the time of death. The pain level was described as 10 out of 10 due to the lack of local anesthesia. On the 20th of December, 2021, just 1 week after Atika and Mohammed arrest, the first phase of court proceedings began. The defense, however, filed a request for Atika to be released on bail. Her lawyers cited her role as a mother of 3 and unexpectedly presented a medical document claiming she had psycho-emotional conditions that, in their view, would worsen in detention. This document had not been part of the original case file, and no such information had previously been reported about her. The judge granted the request, setting bail at 30,000 Malaysian ringgit. Atika was released and returned home to live with her sons. The decision sparked public outrage. During the investigation, investigators found dozens of videos on the seized phones from Atika and Mohammed. They captured scenes from inside the family's apartment. None of the footage was from hidden cameras. Every clip had been recorded deliberately at close range by the people involved. The videos showed moments of physical aggression toward Noor, laughter, mocking remarks, and comments in the background suggested that what was happening was treated as entertainment. One of the first videos analyzed showed Noor standing against a wall, trying to shield herself from blows. In the background, a woman's laughter could be heard. Off-camera comments accompanied acts of physical force, slaps, shoves, and blows to her torso. In another clip, she was doused with boiling water. She cried out in pain while a voice off-camera referred to it as another lesson. One of the most disturbing recordings showed a man using a tool resembling pliers to pull out her front teeth, without any pain relief. The recording captures sounds of pained cries and sobbing. The accompanying comments displayed no empathy. Instead, they suggested satisfaction with what was happening. The forensic medical review confirmed the authenticity of the recordings. Forensic dentist examined the injuries and documented the removal of 6 front teeth, along with bone damage and tears to the soft tissue inside the mouth. She stated that such injuries could only have been inflicted through the intentional, forceful use of a tool, alongside the physical aggression. The devices also contained clips in which the victim was placed in humiliating situations. Each act appeared premeditated, intentionally recorded. Officers involved in the initial viewing later reported that some of the material was so disturbing that they couldn't finish watching it. Several left the room before the review was complete. All video evidence was sent for full forensic examination. Investigators determined that all incidents took place inside the same apartment where Noor was later found. Some files were backed up to the cloud, implying they were saved as keepsakes. This digital collection was crucial evidence, proving to investigators that the abuse was not a tragic accident. Instead, it was a planned, ongoing pattern, deliberately recorded and stored, seemingly with satisfaction by the perpetrators. According to the forensic medical report, the period from the 8th of December to the 11th of December, 2021, marked a critical escalation of aggression inside the home. All injuries found on Noor's body indicated a significant increase in severity during those days. While earlier wounds showed different stages of healing, the injuries from the end of the first week of December were fresh, acute, and numerous. The forensic pathologist confirmed that during this period, Noor endured intense physical force. Using both blunt and hard objects, the blows targeted her head, face, chest, back, and limbs. The nature of these injuries ruled out accidental falls or self-inflicted harm, pointing instead to deliberate and systematic actions. Particularly large bruises on her shoulders and lower back suggested repeated forceful impact. Alongside the beatings, the same period brought burn injuries, thermal damage classified as second and third degree. Her shoulders, back, lower torso, and thighs were affected. According to the medical examiner, the skin in these areas was undergoing active tissue destruction, with portions beginning to die, leading to a diagnosis of necrotizing fasciitis. This condition develops when burn and trauma wounds provide an entry point for infection. Noor's body was overtaken by an aggressive bacterial process that destroyed soft tissue. The critical point came when the infection entered her bloodstream, triggering sepsis, a dangerous systemic reaction that can lead to organ failure. The medical review confirmed that her death was not instantaneous but the result of a slow physical decline, exacerbated by the complete lack of medical attention, isolated and denied treatment, or the ability to seek help. Noor spent her final days in mounting pain as the infection spread. Disinfectant was sprayed in the room to mask the stench. In October 2022, Mohammed's lawyers argued in court that the investigation against him was taking too long and that he hadn't been formally charged. The court agreed with these arguments and granted him bail. As a result, both suspects in a serious criminal case were back in the community less than a year after their arrests. The public reacted quickly and strongly. Social media was flooded with thousands of posts criticizing the justice system. People questioned whether the court was fair, suggesting the accused person's social status, reputation, and connections influenced the decision. In response, organizations advocating for the rights of migrant and domestic workers issued open letters to the Ministry of Justice and the Attorney General's office. These letters highlighted the discriminatory nature of the case, where the victim had been denied civil protections while the accused benefited from substantial social influence. Media coverage included direct allegations of selective justice. This episode became a clear example of systemic vulnerability. The prosecution insisted on the immediate detention of the suspects, but legal maneuvering and the defense's strategic arguments delayed any punishment. After Atika and Mohammed were released, the case stalled. The investigation ended. No one was charged with homicide. Noor's family had no legal representation in Malaysia, making it very difficult for them to follow the case. Because Noor's citizenship was unconfirmed, she had no diplomatic protection. This lack of protection allowed Malaysian authorities to proceed slowly. Meanwhile, the defendant's family seemed to continue their lives as normal. Social media showed pictures of their sons, vacations, and everyday family activities. Although some information was made private, It appeared that their lives had not changed significantly. They could travel, I had access to resources, and were not under house arrest. Over time, public attention faded. News outlets shifted to other stories, and the case gradually disappeared from the headlines. Petitions and appeals that had once gathered tens of thousands of signatures stopped gaining momentum. This gave the accused a sense of security. Neither made any public apology or offered an explanation for what had happened. The case remained open until 2023. 18 months after Nur's death, the case went to trial, with Etika and Mohammed charged with premeditated murder. Their trial in the High Court of Sabah attracted considerable media and public interest. However, the trial was not broadcast live, and public access to documents was restricted. The trial focused on each defendant's role. Etika was portrayed as the instigator and leader, directing the events and physically assaulting Nur. Mohammed was accused of assisting in the crime, participating in specific events, and helping to cover up evidence after Nur's death. In court, both defendants remained composed. Etika refused to comment, stating only that she had no intention of killing anyone. Mohammed also refrained from making statements, but his facial expressions and demeanor betrayed no signs of remorse. The trial lasted several months. Public attention would spike each time local media published short summaries of the hearings. Civil society groups and human rights organizations continued to monitor the case, insisting on transparency and opposing any attempt to downgrade the charges. In July 2023, following a lengthy trial involving hearings, evidence review, and expert testimony, the judge announced the final verdict. Etika Siti Nura Shakeen Mod Sulong was found guilty of premeditated murder committed with extreme cruelty. The court stated that her actions were planned, methodical, and intended to inflict the greatest possible suffering on Nur. Mohammed Ambre Yunus was found guilty of being an accomplice. The court concluded that he actively supported the crime and directly participated in the abuse, although Etika bore the primary responsibility. The judge stressed that Mohammed's involvement was significant. Both Etika and Mohammed were sentenced to death by hanging, the maximum punishment under Malaysian law for premeditated murder. The judge emphasized that their actions not only harmed Nur and her family, but also damaged confidence in the domestic employment system and the legal safeguards for vulnerable people. Following the sentencing, the defense announced plans to appeal. However, as of the end of 2023, the verdict remained in place. Advocacy groups observing the case expressed relief that justice had ultimately been served, despite the lengthy delays and attempts to influence the investigation. After the trial, a delicate issue arose: what to do with the body of Nur. Although she had died almost 2 years prior, her legal status was unclear. Following the autopsy, her body was stored in the morgue at Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Kota Kinabalu. It remained there for over a year and a half, because no country requested its return. Her relatives in Indonesia could not afford to travel to Malaysia or arrange for the body's transportation due to financial and legal limitations. An advocacy group fighting to protect the rights of migrant workers launched a campaign to restore dignity to victims. They sent an open letter to the Ministry of Home Affairs and the Indonesian Embassy, urging authorities to ensure that the deceased would not be forgotten. Due to increased pressure from human rights organizations, Indonesian officials finally intervened. At the end of 2023, Nur Afia Dang Daman was officially recognized as an Indonesian citizen by descent. This decision was important for processing the necessary documents to move her remains and begin the repatriation process. After all, formalities were completed. Her body was handed over to consular representatives. In January 2024, her remains were flown to Indonesia and buried in her mother's hometown. Although simple, the farewell ceremony had deep symbolic meaning. The ceremony ended the long and painful period when her body went unclaimed and unrested, prolonging the suffering of her loved ones. After the sentencing, a campaign was launched to remove the crime from public memory. Etika's relatives tried to maintain a positive image of her. They posted photos of her sons on social media, hinting at injustice, but never mentioning the details of the case. Some of Etika's former charitable projects were restarted with new names, but the same people involved. This allowed the family to continue gaining support without publicly discussing the trial or the victim. Many saw this as an attempt to improve their image in the media. Local media coverage of the case decreased significantly, and comments mentioning the crime were regularly removed from online platforms. Meanwhile, Mohammed and his family remained completely silent, only filing an appeal. The death sentences remain in place, but in Malaysia, their enforcement can take years. Officially, the case is over. In reality, it is simply paused. Noor's family has received no legal compensation, nor any official recognition of their rights. After years of appeals, a new development took place. On June 20, 2025, Etika Siti, Noura Shikin Mod Sulong, 37, and Mohammed Ambre Yunus, 44, were sentenced to 34 years in prison for the murder of Indonesian domestic worker, Nur Afia Daeng Damin. With Mohammed receiving 12 strokes of the cane, the Nur Afia Daeng Damin case is a tragedy that exposes the disturbing underbelly of modern Malaysian society. Under the guise of a perfect family, Etika Siti, Noura Shikin Mod Sulong and Mohammed Ambre Yunus caused the heartbreaking death of a vulnerable migrant worker who had no protection from the legal or social system. The 34-year prison sentence is a step towards justice, but it does not erase the pain of Nur Afia's family. Nur Afia's story is a warning of the precarious situation of millions of migrant domestic workers across Southeast Asia. Her ambiguous legal status, dependence on her employer, and lack of supervision pushed her into a cycle of abuse with no way out. The case has sparked heated debates about labor law reform, calling for better protections for migrant workers, including access to legal aid, monitoring of working conditions, and the removal of regulations that tie them to a single employer. The case has also highlighted the power of digital evidence in exposing crimes, but it has also raised questions about how easily societies can be fooled by the perfect images on social media. Etika and Mohammed's ideal family image masked a horrifying truth, leaving the community unaware of the signs until it was too late. Human rights organizations continue to call for transparency and accountability, ensuring that similar tragedies are not forgotten. While justice has been served, the journey to change is far from over, and efforts to reform the system have been slow. The Nur Afia Daeng Damin case is not just a story of a crime, but a call to action, to build a more just society, where the most vulnerable are protected and respected. Only when these changes become a reality can Nur Afia's tragedy find true meaning, ensuring that she is not forgotten and that her story will spur a better future. Betrayal doesn't come overnight. It creeps in through little lies, fleeting glances, and gradually turns jealousy into obsession. Obsession into a desire for control. Love then becomes manipulation, and the line between loyalty and destruction is blurred. By September 2023, it all explodes into a nightmare that shakes the entire community. 4 members of an innocent family are murdered, but the truth that follows is even more terrifying. A sick psychological game where every action is choreographed, and every life is just a pawn on a deadly chessboard. Behind it all is not a gang or a criminal force, but a twisted love affair, ending in blood and horror. Watch until the end, because this story will show how a seemingly harmless love affair turns into a nightmare no one could have imagined. Nathaniel Huey Jr. was born around 1993 in one of the most troubled neighborhoods of Chicago, echoing the chaos of his early life. He grew up in an environment where aggression and crime were everyday realities. From a young age, he showed signs of impulsivity and a lack of self-control. In school, he often got into fights, clashed with teachers, and showed little interest in learning. The first time he got into trouble with the law was as a teenager, when he was arrested for participating in a robbery. However, due to his young age, he did not receive a serious sentence. He quickly realized that the world of crime was not only exciting but also profitable, which led him to delve into more serious crimes. In 2016, Nathaniel was arrested for assault, and the following year, he was apprehended again for driving under the influence. However, his true fascination lay with firearms. He collected weapons and showcased them on social media, posting pictures of handguns, rifles, and ammunition. This behavior eventually drew the attention of law enforcement, resulting in a court ruling that prohibited him from owning any firearms. Yet, he ignored this restriction and continued to acquire weapons illegally. Despite his ongoing legal troubles, he attempted to start a business by launching a private security company, which was entirely illegitimate as he had no license and was barred from carrying a firearm. Nonetheless, he aggressively advertised his services online, sharing images of himself in body armor and holding weapons. Ermelinda Palomo was born on the 3rd of February, 1973. By the time she met Nathaniel, she was an independent woman, a mother of 5, and already a grandmother. In contrast to Nathaniel's chaotic upbringing, Ermelinda grew up in a stable family. Though her personal life had its complexities, after marrying young and getting divorced, she raised her children and took care of her grandchildren by herself. Yearning to find happiness for herself, known for her strong personality, Ermelinda commanded respect from her family. Although some found her overly strict, she liked to be in control and expected complete loyalty from those closest to her. When Nathaniel entered her life, their connection puzzled many. He was 20 years younger, had a troubled past, and a volatile temperament. Their relationship developed quickly, starting with a chance meeting through mutual acquaintances. Initially, Ermelinda dismissed Nathaniel, but his confidence, persistence, and charm eventually won her over. For Nathaniel, Ermelinda offered a sense of security, providing shelter and emotional support. For Ermelinda, it was a new experience that made her feel empowered, as though she were guiding this younger man. Their unusual bond brought together two people with starkly different backgrounds. They moved in together, and soon Ermelinda's children and grandchildren were living under the same roof. Although the house became crowded, it lacked warmth and harmony. Rose, as neighbors began to notice the lack of peace in their relationship. Nathaniel's short temper clashed with Ermelinda's need for control, creating a volatile atmosphere. Nathaniel was determined to maintain his weapon collection. Despite legal restrictions, he continued to acquire handguns and rifles from illegal sources, making shady deals and exploiting loopholes. He took pride in his growing arsenal and enjoyed discussing firearms at length, often spending hours talking about calibers and modifications. What began as a mere interest evolved into an integral part of his daily life. He carried a handgun even at home, frequently disassembling and reassembling it at the kitchen table. His weapons were always in plain sight, causing those around him to feel increasingly uneasy. Initially, Ermelinda chose not to get involved in Nathaniel's activities as long as he brought money home. She ignored the fact that his business was illegal and didn't ask questions. However, over time, she started to notice that it wasn't only about the money. Nathaniel was becoming increasingly unstable. He gets easily angered when things don't go his way, sometimes just because of small matters like the gaze of others or the moment someone speaks. His outbursts would happen suddenly, but he would quickly return to normal, acting as if nothing had occurred. Christina, one of Ermelinda's daughters, was the first to voice her concerns. She recognized what others tended to overlook. Nathaniel was not just difficult, he was potentially dangerous. Christina never trusted him and noticed how he often spoke about aggression, carried himself as if he was better than everyone else, and couldn't handle being contradicted. What alarmed her the most was how easily he could become aggressive. During one argument, he clenched his fists so hard that his knuckles turned white, and she knew that if she didn't stop him, he would one day cross the line. The tension in the household continued to rise, although no one explicitly talked about it. The fear of Nathaniel was growing increasingly difficult to ignore. By 2021, Nathaniel and Ermelinda had been together for 6 years. Their relationship appeared stable on the surface, but it had long lost its foundation. Nathaniel was never committed to one woman, and his infidelities had become routine. He initiated relationships through social media, quickly moved on from one to the next, and engaged in secret conversations daily. He frequently left the house late at night, claiming it was for work-related meetings or personal reasons. Ermelinda often found herself awake in the middle of the night, realizing he was gone again, only for him to return in the early morning without any explanations. Nathaniel believed he was invulnerable, and thought Ermelinda either wouldn't discover his actions or wouldn't confront him. But he underestimated her resilience. At first, Ermelinda dismissed his behavioral changes, but she soon realized how often he was absent, how much he was texting someone, and his sudden focus on his appearance. While she didn't immediately connect the dots, her suspicions grew. Her breaking point came when she saw a message on his phone. It suggested a recent meeting, confirming her worst fears. However, instead of confronting him right away, she opted to gather more evidence, observing him closely, checking his messages, and scrutinizing his habits. She learned to recognize when he was lying or trying to hide something, and when he was sneaking off to see someone else. Ermelinda was not the type to forgive betrayal easily. She couldn't simply accept the situation or walk away without taking action. She didn't want to create a dramatic scene, but she also wouldn't let Nathaniel escape unscathed. With each new piece of evidence she uncovered, her anger intensified. She faced two choices: leave and cut him off completely, or make him regret his decisions. The more she contemplated, the clearer it became. She wasn't going to be just another woman he discarded. She was determined not to act rashly. She knew a direct confrontation could spiral out of control. Instead, she decided on a more calculated approach. Rather than a fierce argument, she began plotting a subtler form of revenge, a plan to make his life unbearable, putting him in a vulnerable position. Although she hadn't finalized her next move, she was certain of one thing: her silence was merely the calm before the impending storm. After months of careful planning, Ermelinda began to execute her scheme. The first step was to create fake accounts on various platforms. She created multiple accounts using random photos of people and chose believable names. Some accounts were made to represent mysterious women, while others portrayed dangerous individuals with dubious backgrounds. Ermelinda learned about how online scams worked, mastering the techniques of deception and manipulation of people's beliefs. She constructed a detailed network where each fake persona played a specific role. One could be seductive, another, a source of dangerous information, and a third, an anonymous threat. Together, these personas aimed to instill paranoia in Nathaniel, making him feel like he was entangled in a perilous game. To make her plan more convincing, Ermelinda researched criminal networks. She studied underground organizations, intimidation tactics, threat language, and psychological manipulation. She read about the mafia, cartels, and illegal money flows, examining their hierarchies and communication styles while trying to imitate their messaging. Her most effective tool, however, was her ability to control information. By using specialized software and hidden features on social media, she learned to track people's locations, access their contacts, and monitor conversations. Before long, she had enough knowledge to trick Nathaniel. With her plan set, Ermelinda initiated contact with Nathaniel through one of her fake accounts. The persona she created was a mysterious woman who seemed genuinely interested in him. Nathaniel, accustomed to online interactions, didn't suspect anything and quickly responded. However, unlike his usual experiences, this conversation took an unexpected turn. After a few days of casual chatting, Ermelinda, disguised as her fictitious character, began dropping hints about his past, making him uncomfortable with specific details. She then escalated the psychological manipulation by sending him a message with his real-time location. This initial scare was just the beginning, but it was enough to make Nathaniel uneasy. Ermelinda had achieved her first success. He was frightened, and she was just getting started. Seeing that Nathaniel was growing nervous, Ermelinda intensified her strategy by creating even more fake accounts. Now, he's not just being contacted by a stranger. He's surrounded by dangerous characters. From Bulgarian mafia members to cartel enforcers and assassins, each had their own story, motives, and demands. Messages flooded in from different numbers and platforms. Some contained threats, others offered protection, while a few posed strange ultimatums. One insinuated that his survival depended on completing simple tasks. Another claimed he was ensnared in something much larger with no escape. Nathaniel struggled to grasp the situation, but it all felt alarmingly real. As a result, his behavior changed significantly. He constantly looked over his shoulder, avoided calls from unknown numbers, and checked for signs of being followed. At times, he even asked Ermelinda to drive him to safer locations. To evade potential tracking, Ed deleted messages, changed passwords, and attempted to confuse his pursuers, but each action only deepened his paranoia. Ermelinda could see how fear was consuming him, and her plan was succeeding. Nathaniel became fixated on battling a threat that wasn't real, while the true danger loomed closer than he imagined. In May 2023, a new woman named Zoraida Bartolome entered Nathaniel's life when they met at his new job. Initially, their interactions were ordinary, but soon they developed an interest in each other. Zoraida was married with 2 children, but her home life did not bring her happiness. She had a history of infidelity, and meeting Nathaniel was just another instance of that pattern. She did not consider it a moral issue. Instead, she believed her personal happiness took precedence over societal expectations. Nathaniel, too, was unaware of the consequences. His relationship with Ermelinda had lost its significance, and his affair with Zoraida provided the excitement he craved. Nathaniel and Zoraida's relationship began with subtle glances and hints, quickly evolving into constant communication. Ermelinda had been monitoring Nathaniel for a while and noticed his growing connection with Zoraida. Initially, she dismissed it, as Nathaniel's brief romances were nothing new to her. However, she soon realized this relationship was different. His messages to Zoraida shifted from light banter to declarations of love and dreams of a future together. As she read their messages, Ermelinda felt humiliated. All her intricate schemes to control Nathaniel had failed. Despite her efforts to instill fear in him, he was living his life and seemed unaware of her manipulations. This perceived betrayal felt like a direct insult to her power. Ermelinda decided she could no longer be passive. It was time for her to retaliate. She intensified her psychological tactics, introducing new, more threatening elements. She fabricated mafia threats, telling Nathaniel he was in serious danger and needed to end things with Zoraida immediately. However, Nathaniel was undeterred. After enduring months of fear, he felt numb and was now more committed to Zoraida than ever. For the first time, he wasn't just concealing his affair, he was fighting for it. Ermelinda shifted her strategy. She realized that in order to bring Nathaniel down, she couldn't just target him, but also had to put pressure on Zoraida. First, she began by instilling fear in Alberto, Zoraida's husband. Using fake accounts, she sent cryptic messages that hinted at Zoraida's infidelity, along with suspicious photos. When that failed to create the desired effect, she resorted to direct threats. Alberto received anonymous letters warning him that his family was in danger and that harm could come to his loved ones. Ermelinda knew this fear would drive him to act. Initially, Alberto tried to disregard the threats, but soon anxiety took over. He had no idea who was behind it, but it was clear the issue extended beyond marital troubles. Ermelinda had succeeded. Tension was rising in Zoraida's home, and fear influenced their choices. However, Nathaniel was not completely devastated yet. Despite the anxious thoughts that Ermelinda stirred up and the pressure from fabricated criminal organizations, he remained steadfast by Zoraida's side. Ermelinda saw an opportunity to exploit his trust. She revealed that she was aware of Zoraida and began to spin a new narrative, convincing Nathaniel that Zoraida was not who she claimed to be. Ermelinda persuaded Nathaniel that Zoraida was actually involved with the mafia. She fabricated enough credible information to make him believe this lie. She sent him messages from various informants suggesting that Zoraida had been manipulating him and that Zoraida's presence in his life was suspicious. She crafted this deception meticulously, leading Nathaniel to believe he had no choice but to accept it. He began to connect various dots. This explained the mafia's knowledge about him, the surveillance he faced, and Zoraida's lack of fear regarding the threats. Ermelinda did not stop there. She demanded proof of Nathaniel's loyalty. He needed to demonstrate that he would not betray those who had supposedly saved him from danger. Conversations about handling Zoraida and her family began to take a more direct turn. The message was clear. There was no other choice. Exhausted and overwhelmed, Nathaniel finally acquiesced to Ermelinda's control. He no longer questioned the reality of the situation. Ermelinda had won. He was willing to do whatever it took to prove his loyalty. Believing there was no fear or regret in fulfilling what he thought was a necessary task, he started planning the crime with the same meticulousness he had once applied to his illicit business. The first step was to surveil Zoraida. He studied her schedule, noting when she was home and who was with her. He paid special attention to times when her husband and family might be in danger. Nathaniel carefully studied the entrances of the house, planned escape routes, and spent days monitoring Zoraida's movements to memorize every detail. Simultaneously, he collected supplies. Although he already had some weapons, he required additional items, such as new clothes, gloves, bags, tape, and a flashlight. He went shopping with Ermelinda, who stayed in the background to avoid raising suspicion. They approached each step as if they were preparing for a critical mission, with Ermelinda acting as his advisor, guiding Nathaniel and reinforcing his belief that he had to execute the plan flawlessly. She convinced him that this was the only option available. By the time he was prepared, he had stopped contemplating the consequences and thought he was simply doing what was necessary. The decision was made. All that remained was to act. On the designated night of September 16, 2023, their plan was set to unfold. Ermelinda appeared calm, as if unaware of what was happening. Later that night, they drove to Zoraida's house. With Ermelinda driving nonchalantly like it was an ordinary errand, she inquired a few times about the purpose of their visit, but Nathaniel didn't respond. His focus was solely on his objective. Upon arrival, Ermelinda remained in the car while Nathaniel got out and approached the house, expecting the front door to be locked. He broke a window in the backyard and slipped inside. The noise startled Alberto, who woke up and went to investigate. At that moment, Nathaniel fired, but missed. Alberto quickly understood that this was not a typical burglary. He turned and rushed towards the hallway, trying to reach his family's room for safety. However, Nathaniel caught up to him in the hallway. A few gunshots followed, and Alberto fell to the floor before he could reach the door. The house then fell silent, except for Nathaniel's heavy breathing. Hearing the gunfire, Zoraida barricaded herself in her bedroom with her family. Unsure who was attacking them, Nathaniel attempted to force the bedroom door open, but it wouldn't budge. He took aim at the lock and shot it, the bullet striking Zoraida and causing her to stop moving. He then shot and killed her two children, Adriel, 9, and Diego, 7. Killing them instantly, the door swung open, and silence enveloped the room. Neighbors only heard muffled sounds. It was all over in a matter of minutes. Nathaniel inspected the house, tossing furniture around to simulate a robbery, and creating the appearance of a struggle. Afterwards, he returned to the car where Ermelinda waited. She didn't ask about the outcome. They simply drove away, leaving devastation behind. For a moment, silence hung over Zoraida's home, but it didn't last. Alarmed neighbors, disturbed by the gunfire and broken glass, quickly called the authorities. Reporting the incident around 4:00 a.m., officers arrived within minutes. Upon entering, they noticed signs of forced entry, and it was evident that this was a deliberate crime rather than a random act of violence. Nathaniel's first mistake was not creating a convincing enough fake of the robbery. Although items were scattered, nothing of value was missing, indicating a planned attack rather than a burglary. The disarray did little to convince investigators that theft was the motive. More critically, it didn't take long for the police to link the crime to someone with a strong motive. By morning, detectives had begun to investigate Zoraida's personal connections. Many at work knew about her affair with Nathaniel, with colleagues describing their relationship as more than just casual. They had discussed a future together. And soon, Nathaniel's name became central to the investigation. As detectives delved into Nathaniel's background, they uncovered a lengthy record of offenses, illegal activities, and a significant obsession with weapons. The evidence overwhelmingly pointed to him. While the police collected information, Ermelinda continued her manipulation. She messaged Nathaniel, pretending to be part of the mafia, assuring him that everything was going according to plan. She created a false sense of security, convincing him that as long as he followed her directions, he would be safe. She made sure he believed that the authorities would never be able to prove his involvement. The investigation advanced quickly, and detectives started looking into Nathaniel's recent activities, uncovering several inconsistencies. Upon reviewing his calls and messages, they discovered that he had received numerous threats in the past few months, not from established criminal organizations, but from new anonymous accounts. This raised important questions. If the mafia was involved, why did all the evidence point to Nathaniel? Why were there so many coincidences? Could the threat have been staged? These uncertainties marked a shift in the investigation, leading detectives to suspect that there was more to the case than just gang-related crime. As the investigation approached its conclusion, Nathaniel felt the pressure mounting. He realized that the police were closing in on him and that arrest was imminent. His panic intensified when he noticed he was being followed. He tried to reassure himself that the mafia would protect him, but deep down, he knew that wasn't true. Desperate, he reached out to his mother. They met in a secluded location. Away from anyone who might overhear, he explained that he was in danger, facing serious accusations, and needed to disappear. However, instead of offering help, she showed fear and hesitation, recognizing that assisting him would involve her in the crime. For a few days, Nathaniel tried to hide, but surveillance cameras caught him at a grocery store with Ermelinda. Once the police confirmed their location, a chase ensued. Patrol cars surrounded the area, but Nathaniel and Ermelinda managed to get onto the highway. He was driving while she sat beside him, calmly observing the chaos. The critical question was who was really in control. Nathaniel thought he was. But everything was unfolding according to Ermelinda's plan. The police pursued them for miles, but Nathaniel had no intention of stopping. He tightened his grip on the steering wheel, speeding through traffic. He was overcome with fear as he tried to escape. Ermelinda remained eerily calm beside him, never asking him to stop or pleading for him to give up. As they sped into a congested area of the highway, Nathaniel attempted to maneuver around a truck, but lost control. The car skidded, crashed into the guardrail, and rolled multiple times before coming to a halt. When officers reached the wreck, the inside of the car was disturbingly quiet. Nathaniel was still in the driver's seat, holding a gun, and Ermelinda was lifeless next to him. In the moments leading up to the accident, he shot her before taking his own life. Investigators reconstructed the scene to understand why he acted this way. Was it revenge? A final outburst? Or had he realized who was truly behind everything in those last moments? Had Ermelinda revealed her role during their final ride? Unfortunately, there were no answers, as the only two who knew the truth were gone. However, the investigation did not end with their deaths. Detectives meticulously examined their last movements, phone records, and messages. Initially, they believed Ermelinda was a victim, manipulated by a dangerous man. Yet, the deeper they dug, the more complex the real story became. A significant breakthrough occurred when they analyzed Ermelinda's devices. Her laptop and phone held a wealth of messages, numerous fake accounts, and logs detailing visits to sites associated with surveillance and social engineering tactics, forensic experts quickly connected the dots. Ermelinda had orchestrated the entire facade of threats to convince Nathaniel he was being pursued by a criminal organization. Even more incriminating were her messages, where she directed his actions, leading him toward a predetermined conclusion. Logs, records, IP addresses, and chat histories all indicated that she was the mastermind behind the scheme. She didn't merely exploit Nathaniel's fears. She meticulously guided him down a path of ruin. The recovered files revealed that this manipulation had been ongoing for over a year. Not just weeks. This was no emotional breakdown or crime of passion. It was a carefully planned strategy. She had studied psychological manipulation, researched surveillance methods, and tested ways to control someone's mind. When the truth emerged, the case transformed completely. What initially appeared to be jealousy revealed itself as a chilling psychological game, with Ermelinda as the true mastermind. Ironically, her own lies led to her destruction. She tried to control everything until the end, but ultimately, she became a victim of the illusion she created. She manipulated Nathaniel into committing crimes, made him believe in a false reality, and in the end, he turned against her. Although the case was officially closed, many questions remained. Did Nathaniel realize the truth before it was too late? Or did he die still, thinking he was just a pawn in a non-existent conflict? There were no clear answers, only the stark reality that the most dangerous weapon is not a bullet or knife, but a lie strong enough to destroy someone from within. It was past midnight when something strange happened. A dog was sniffing the ground near a quiet riverbank. Suddenly, an unmistakable, pungent stench rose from the ground. Something terrible was buried there. What followed was a horrifying discovery. The bodies of the girls so decomposed that they could only be identified by their feet, all bound, their throats slit, and their mouths gagged. Just days earlier, the three young women had set off on what was supposed to be a fun trip. They told their families they were going to the beach with friends, but they never returned. What happened to them? The answer would shock the nation. The truth was darker and more horrifying than anyone could have imagined. In the heart of Santo Domingo, Ecuador, three young women, Juliana Macias, Denise Reina, and Nayeli Tapia, were full of dreams and ambitions. They had met through mutual friends, and their connection grew quickly, rooted in their shared passions for music, modeling, and a better future. Juliana, nicknamed Syria after the Greek goddess, was known for her intelligence, determination, and cheerful spirit. She excelled in school, earning the honor of being her class's flag bearer. But her true passion was music. With a strong singing voice and big ambitions, she dreamed of studying psychology, becoming a famous singer, and traveling the world. At just 21, Juliana was already performing solo, singing at political events, and had recently joined a band called Las Diablitas. To her, success felt closer than ever. Nayeli, 22, was admired for her warmth and generosity. A devoted young mother to her 4-year-old daughter, she had moved from Quito to Santo Domingo to live with her sister. Between modeling gigs and caring for her little girl, she dreamed of moving to Spain, believing it would open doors to a brighter future. No matter how busy life got, being a mother always came first for her. Denise, only 19, was a kind and thoughtful young woman studying agricultural engineering. She loved helping others and once dreamed of opening a veterinary clinic, but later focused on finishing her degree. Her new goal was to move to the United States and build a fresh start. She always thought ahead, carefully planning her future. But even the best-laid plans can't prepare someone for what's to come. On Tuesday, April 4, 2023, their lives took a devastating turn. Around 9:00 a.m., a black car arrived at Denise's house. She had been invited on a trip to the Casablanca Hotel, a resort by the coast. Something inside her hesitated. She didn't feel right about going. But despite her unease, she got into the car. Later that day, she and the driver picked up Nayeli, who had just returned to Santo Domingo. That afternoon, both young women reassured their families. They were heading to the coast with friends. That night, they picked up Juliana, who told her grandmother she was going to meet a friend. What began as an innocent late-night road trip was about to spiral into tragedy. At 11:10 p.m., Nayeli sent her sister a live location with a chilling note. She was sharing it just in case. Moments later, her phone went silent. No calls, no replies. The sudden, heavy silence was the first sign that something was terribly wrong. Elsewhere that same night, Denise also reached out to a close friend. Her message carried a haunting weight. She admitted she had a bad feeling, that something awful might happen, and if it did, she wanted her friend to know just how much she loved her. As the night stretched into the early hours of the 5th of April, one of Denise's relatives received a message claiming she was still with Nayeli and some friends. Around the same time, Juliana uploaded a video status. The girls were in a car, singing, smiling, their voices blending with the music that filled the night. Then, silence. Morning came, but the girls did not return. Their phones went dead. No posts, no calls, no trace. Their families, gripped by panic and confusion, waited desperately for news that never came. On Wednesday, the 5th of April, Juliana's aunt, Rueda, a well-known women's rights activist, took the first step. She went straight to the authorities and reported her niece missing. A day later, on Thursday, the 6th of April, a group of fishermen made a horrifying discovery near a riverbank. One of their dogs began digging furiously at disturbed earth. As the men approached, a foul stench filled the air. Beneath the soil lay the partial remains of a body. Police rushed to the scene. When investigators began digging, they quickly realized the horror was far greater. There wasn't just one body. There were 3, all bound at the wrists, all showing signs of torture. The injuries were deep, savage, and clearly caused by sharp weapons, likely machetes. Forensic teams worked quickly to recover the bodies and transport them for autopsy. The confirmation came within hours. The victims were Denise Reyna, 19, Juliana Macias, 21, and Nayeli Tapia, 22. 2 of them had been found with their mouths taped shut, dressed in light beachwear, bathing suits and shorts. The news devastated their families. Many had still believed the girls would return home alive. Instead, they were met with the unimaginable reality of walking into a morgue. Paulina, always at the forefront, handled the identification of Juliana, but the injuries to her face were so severe that she could only be recognized by the shape of her toes. In the days that followed, the families gathered, piecing together every detail of what they knew from that night. Whispers of something sinister surfaced. They believed the killers might have used chemicals to speed up decomposition. Some even feared acid had been involved. Authorities, however, remained tight-lipped. One official said the forensic results were confidential. Another dismissed the acid theory as speculation from grieving relatives. The public was shaken. News of the murders spread quickly, igniting outrage across Ecuador. Social media flooded with grief, anger, and demands for justice. Photos of the 3 young women, once symbols of joy and promise, now became a national outcry. Their families were vocal, insisting the investigation must continue until the truth was uncovered and those responsible were held accountable. As investigators pressed forward, early theories began to take shape. Then, the autopsy results arrived, and they confirmed the worst fears. The examination revealed that all 3 had died from deep slash wounds to the neck, inflicted by a sharp, bladed weapon. Their bodies bore unmistakable signs of torture, details almost too horrific to speak aloud. On the 9th of April, 2023, the families laid their daughters to rest in Santo Domingo. The funerals were heartbreaking, filled with tears and tributes. Family and friends chose to remember them for the happiness they brought to others during their lives. During the service, Paulina Rueda, Juliana Meixasaunt, was approached and threatened by a man in a cap and mask. Before she could respond, he disappeared into the crowd. The threat sent waves of fear through the grieving families. For days, Nayeli and Denise's relatives pulled back from the media, choosing silence over danger. But Paulina refused to be silenced. She went public with the threat and requested inclusion in Ecuador's witness protection program. Authorities initially promised to accompany the families and evaluate their case. But according to Paulina, protection never came. Even so, the fight for justice only grew stronger. Despite fear and uncertainty, the families of all three young women eventually stepped forward to speak with a local news outlet. They shared memories, stories, and the dreams that Juliana, Nayeli, and Denise would never have the chance to fulfill. None of them knew who the friends were, that the girls were supposed to meet that night. All they wanted were answers, justice, and closure. They also pleaded with the public to come forward with any information that might help identify those responsible. But as their voices grew louder, so did the noise. Online rumors began to swirl. One particularly cruel claim suggested the girls may have been linked to banned substance trafficking. Paulina quickly shut those allegations down, making it clear there was no evidence to support such rumors and urging the public not to spread misinformation that only distracted from the investigation. A video added further fuel to the fire. It showed Juliana singing at a bar alongside a man named Roberto Zambrano and a small group of others. Some insisted it had been filmed just hours before the murders. But Roberto himself stepped forward, clarifying that the video was recorded weeks earlier during his birthday celebration. He had nothing to do with the crime. Still, the damage to his name was severe. His career, reputation, and family life were thrown into chaos, forcing him to announce plans to file a defamation lawsuit. Paulina confirmed his account, stressing that the video was completely unrelated to the case. As time went on, more rumors surfaced, some collapsing under the weight of evidence, others fading into silence. Meanwhile, investigators pressed forward. Then came a breakthrough. Police identified the black vehicle that had picked up the girls. It was a rental car, using GPS data. They reconstructed the route taken that night. Every turn, every stop, every mile traveled before the murders. Near the site of the shallow graves, they uncovered a crucial piece of evidence. One of the victims' cell phones, abandoned by the killers. It would soon become a key element in the pursuit of justice. In the wake of national outrage, Ecuador's Attorney General's office activated its official protocol for investigating femicides and violent crimes against women. The brutality of the case had horrified the nation, and now every eye was fixed on the investigation. Journalists followed every lead, and every new detail became headline news. Yet behind the scenes, progress was difficult. Much of the case remained under wraps. Officials announced that the full investigative report would remain sealed for at least 1 year. The lead prosecutor admitted that the remote location of the crime posed major obstacles. There were no nearby security cameras and no eyewitnesses, or at least none willing to speak. But the silence would not last forever. Soon, investigators reported another breakthrough. Through security footage, emergency response systems, and cooperation from local residents, they identified 2 men who had been seen with the victims on the 4th of April. These men became prime suspects. Still, investigators remained guarded, needing time to compile enough technical evidence to hold up in court. Meanwhile, the families refused to remain quiet. On May 3rd, nearly a month after the disappearances, they organized a massive demonstration, a white march, held on Friday, May 6th. Rueda, always leading from the front, declared that the march was not only about demanding justice, but also about urging the nation to stop normalizing violence against women. She vowed they would not rest until the killers were behind bars. Then came a dramatic announcement. In a police operation code named Armageddon, the Minister of the Interior confirmed the arrest of 2 men, believed to be directly responsible for the murders. brothers Andre Zambrano, 27, and Holger Zambrano, 34. The pair had been attempting to flee toward the Peruvian border. One of them already had a criminal record for extortion. A judge swiftly ordered the freezing of their assets and granted extended protection measures to witnesses and the victims' families. But the case didn't end there. Investigators soon uncovered more names connected to the crime. One of them was Omar Ordóñez, a close associate of the Zambrano brothers. In November 2023, he was tracked down in a neighboring province. Omar wasn't just a friend of the brothers. He had links to a criminal organization and a past filled with illegal weapons charges. The fourth suspect, Luis Fernandez Votza, was believed to be the driver of the car that transported the girls on that tragic night. But authorities never got the chance to question him. His body was later discovered, dismembered, in what investigators called a targeted killing. At first, prosecutors filed charges of femicide, but later reclassified them as murder. The reasoning, according to court documents, there was no proof of a romantic or emotional connection between the suspects and the victims. But to Paulina, that argument was insulting. To her, it didn't matter if these men were strangers. This was violence against women in its most brutal form. Then came the courtroom battle. Holger, who rented the car, was acquitted after proving he wasn't present during the killings. But Andre and Omar faced trial on April 9, 2024. Prosecutors brought forward forensic reports, autopsy results, and testimonies from witnesses who had seen the accused with the victims. Even staff from the car rental agency took the stand, sealing the chain of evidence. On May 17, 2024, 1 year and 1 month after the murders, the verdict finally came down. The court sentenced Andre Zambrano and Omar Ordóñez to 34 years and 8 months in prison. They were also ordered to pay $300,000 in reparations to the victims' families, plus an additional fine of more than $600,000. Outside the courthouse, Paulina spoke through tears. She described the relief that swept over the families for the loved ones of Juliana, Denise, and Nayeli. It had been a year-long fight. Now, at last, they could breathe. But even then, the case wasn't closed. The defense immediately filed an appeal. On October 22, 2024, the provincial court upheld the original ruling, 34 years and 8 months behind bars for both Andre and Omar. It was a historic moment in Ecuador's battle against gender-based violence. Still, the defense threatened to push the case to the National Court of Justice, the last possible appeal. This case didn't just scar the nation, it sparked a movement. Juliana, Denise, and Nayeli were more than just victims. They were daughters, students, a mother, dreamers, 3 women full of life and purpose. Stolen in an act of senseless cruelty, their story changed the conversation around femicide in Ecuador, and their families refused to stay silent. Easter Sunday, 2015. In the sky above England, Victoria Cilliers, a veteran female soldier who has completed more than 2,600 jumps, plunges from a height of 4,000 feet. It should have been a routine jump, but as soon as she pulls the cord, she realizes the horrifying truth. Her main parachute does not open. She quickly switches to the backup parachute, but it does not work either. In the middle of the air, Victoria falls freely at a speed of 96 kilometers per hour, completely helpless, believing that the last seconds of her life are numbered. However, in an unbelievable way, she survives, and that is when the real nightmare begins. Because the more the police investigated, the more they realized that this was not an accident. This is a sophisticated murder plan, arranged by the person she trusts the most. Victoria grew up east of Edinburgh with her parents, Veronica and Michael. She had a comfortable upbringing, attending the expensive Edinburgh Academy. However, her teenage years were difficult as her mother developed cancer. While her mother was ill, Victoria, at age 16, did her first charity parachute jump to raise money for cancer research. This experience ignited her love for skydiving. At age 22, Victoria became a physiotherapy officer in the Royal Army Medical Corps. She served in a field hospital in Kosovo and achieved the rank of captain. While her military career was successful, her personal life was challenging. 4 years later, she married Captain Liam Fitzgerald Finch. However, they spent much time separated, and Victoria suspected him of infidelity. Ultimately, she ended the marriage. After her first marriage ended due to distance and cheating, she believed she might never find love again. At 29, she dedicated herself to her work with the Ministry of Defense, helping injured soldiers recover from their deployments. But in the winter of 2009, her life took an unexpected turn. Emile, a Royal Artillery sergeant and physical training instructor, sought treatment at Victoria's Center for a knee injury from a skiing accident during his army service. He was captivating, and Victoria remembered feeling special whenever he smiled at her. Soon after their initial meeting, they began a relationship. Unbeknownst to Victoria, Emile was still married to Carly, with whom he had 2 children. When Victoria learned the truth, Emile claimed he had married Carly for visa reasons and was in the process of divorcing her. Overwhelmed by his charm and declarations of love, Victoria accepted his explanation. In 2011, Emile and Victoria got married in Cape Town, South Africa. Victoria felt like her dream had come true. A new beginning with a loving husband ready to start a life together. Soon after, they had their first daughter. Despite Victoria's struggle with postpartum depression, they seemed like the ideal military couple. Emile was likable, ambitious, and appeared completely dedicated to Victoria, who believed she had finally found her happy ending. However, Victoria would soon discover that her seemingly perfect life could turn into a nightmare. In May 2013, the first problem arose when Emile asked Victoria for money, and she sent it to him. When she asked why, he claimed his wages had been mixed up at work, a reason Victoria accepted because she wanted to trust him. 2 months later, Emile moved £6,000 from Victoria's account to his without her consent. He told her that her account had been hacked, and again, Victoria believed him. In hindsight, she would recognize this as the start of a growing pattern of financial manipulation. As Emile and Victoria's relationship progressed, Emile's behavior became more concerning. He accumulated debt and spent Victoria's money, offering weak explanations like errors in his paycheck. Even more troubling, he frequently disappeared for extended periods. One of Victoria's friends accused him of sending inappropriate messages to her 16-year-old daughter. Additionally, Victoria found emails from an adult club on the family computer that were addressed to him. Victoria discovered condoms both at home and in Emile's car. She also found suspicious messages on his phone from other women. These messages included conversations where he mentioned plans to visit them, possibly related to an adult club. The most shocking news came when Carly brought Emile's children for a visit. As Victoria wrote in her book, Carly casually said something that stunned her. Carly assumed Victoria knew about the other children. Emile had never told Victoria that he had 2 older children with a woman named Meline in South Africa before he had his 2 children with Carly. Victoria worried about Emile's lack of honesty, but she was trapped in a cycle of manipulation. Emile would show remorse, cook her meals, and leave love notes around the house. Each time she considered leaving, he would pull her back in with promises and explanations. She had no idea that her husband's deception ran far deeper than she could imagine. Emile was born in South Africa in 1980. His parents were Zahan, a preschool teacher, and Stoltz, an engineer. He grew up in a small town known for farming and mining. He attended a private school for Afrikaner children and was raised in a strict Christian home. Even as a teenager, Emile was known for his interest in girls. At 16, he pursued Meline, a 13-year-old. Meline was flattered by the attention from an older boy and found him handsome, confident, charming. She recalls his charisma and romantic gestures, like giving her a long-stemmed rose on their monthly anniversary. Even as a teenager, Emile displayed manipulative behavior that would later affect his relationships. Nicoline initially ignored his cheating because she was charmed by his romantic gestures. He frequently cheated on her, but she always forgave him. In June 2000, when Nicoline was 16, she gave birth to their first child, Silene. Emile proposed using his grandmother's ring in a grand and romantic gesture to show how serious he was. However, Nicoline postponed the engagement upon discovering he was having an affair with her best friend. Emile was working in Oxfordshire, England, as a farmhand and bartender when his daughter Selene was born. He returned to South Africa in 2002 and rekindled his relationship with Nicoline. Soon after, Nicoline became pregnant with their second child, Trevor. However, within a year, Nicoline received shocking news. Emile's mother, Zahan, informed her that Emile had married another woman, Carly Taylor. Emile had met Carly in an Oxford pub in 2001 and married her in 2003, all while still assuring Nicoline of their future together. In 2006, despite being heartbroken, Nicoline moved to Britain and settled in Somerton. Later, Silene expressed a desire to meet her father, so Nicoline contacted Emile. He was now living in Larkhill, Wiltshire, and serving in the British Army. Emile replied right away, stating that he was getting a divorce and that his marriage to Carly was only to resolve a visa issue. Nicoline and Emile then rekindled their relationship, which turned out to be a grave error. 4 weeks into their relationship, Emile was at work when his mobile phone rang. He had forgotten it at home, so Nicoline answered it. The caller was Carly. Nicoline told Carly she knew Emile was separated, but Carly corrected her. They then decided to confront Emile at his house. Nicoline recalls that Emile was very surprised, with his reaction being one of complete shock. He started speaking in Afrikaans. Knowing Carly wouldn't understand, after his initial shock wore off, Emile tried to act cool and confident, looking back and forth between them. In November 2014, Emile went to Austria for a month with the army ski team. His wife, Victoria, they was about 6 months pregnant, with their second child at the time. Emile told Victoria the trip was mandatory training, but he was lying. While in Austria, Emile used the dating app Tinder and met Stephanie Gohler, a 36-year-old skydiving instructor. He told Stephanie that his marriage to Victoria was over, that Victoria had been unfaithful, and that he wasn't the father of her unborn child. So, while Victoria was at home, pregnant and taking care of their first child, Emile started an affair with Stephanie. This affair would eventually lead him to plan a murder. In December 2014, Emile lied to Victoria, telling her he was going on a work trip. Instead, he spent New Year's week in Berlin with Stephanie. The trip was a lavish affair, including a spa costing over $700 per night, which Emile paid for with money he had secretly borrowed from Victoria. While Emile was in Berlin, a debt collector came to Victoria and Emile's home. Emile had borrowed money from a loan shark. The debt collector was there to intimidate him and his pregnant wife. Victoria was aware that Emile had debts and had already lent him 19,000 British pounds to help him repay them. Not knowing that he was using her money to fund his affair, in February 2015, Stephanie stayed with him for a week at his barracks in Aldershot. Including Valentine's Day, Victoria had just given birth to their son. While her husband was spending the most romantic day of the year with another woman, the investigation uncovered the truth about Emile's lies. He had been unfaithful to Victoria throughout their 6-year marriage, as evidenced by posts on FabSwingers. He also visited escort service. Victoria was unaware that Emile was living a double life. In January 2015, Emile texted Stephanie that from April onwards, he could do random and spontaneous things. He also told Stephanie that he regretted marrying Victoria, calling it a stupid mistake. These words foreshadowed a tragic future. On March 29, 2015, Emile met Stephanie, whom he saw from time to time. Later, wanting to intimate while not with Stephanie, Emile texted his ex-wife, Carly, to meet up. He then lied to his current wife, Victoria, telling her he had to stay at the army barracks that night. Before leaving for the barracks, Emile went to the kitchen and used pliers and a wrench to loosen the nut on the gas valve. Victoria and their 2 young children were asleep upstairs. By tampering with the gas valve, Emile endangered their lives to gain his freedom. The next day, Victoria smelled gas in the kitchen, suspecting a problem. She called Emile. He shockingly told her to turn the gas on, but she refused. Trusting her gut feeling, Victoria jokingly texted her husband whether he was trying to kill her. Unbeknownst to her, he was. Her refusal saved her life, preventing his first attempt to murder her. Luckily, she noticed the leak before it was too late, but Emile wasn't finished. The failed gas leak only strengthened his resolve to find another way. Time was running out, and Victoria had no idea her husband had already decided she had to die. After the gas leak, Emile pretended to want to fix his relationship with Victoria. He proposed a family Easter weekend and offered her a skydiving session as a gift. Victoria, a seasoned skydiver and instructor with 2,654 jumps, viewed this gift as a fresh start. She had taken a break after their second child was born and was eager to jump again. On the 4th of April, 2015, the day before Easter, they went to Netherhavn Airfield for a parachute jump. The jump was cancelled due to bad weather, which seemed disappointing. However, Emile had a plan. Instead of returning his wife, Victoria's parachutes, he hid them in their locker at the airfield. He told Victoria they could try again on Easter Sunday. He then took her parachute rig into the airfield toilets and tampered with it. During the trial, a demonstration showed that the sabotage could be done in a toilet stall in a little over 5 minutes. Emile knew what he was doing. According to the prosecution, he twisted the main parachute's lines to stop it from opening and removed parts from the reserve parachute. This sabotage required specialized knowledge of parachute packing. Only someone very familiar with how parachutes are packed would know which parts to remove and understand that doing so would cause the parachute to fail completely. The specific way the parachute was tampered with indicated it wasn't a simple equipment malfunction. The next morning, the weather was still bad, so they decided to do a hop and pop in the afternoon. A hop and pop is a jump from a low altitude where the parachute is opened right away. At her husband's trial, Victoria said she went back to the airfield alone on Easter Sunday. She wasn't excited about the jump anymore, but her husband convinced her to do it. Victoria also said that she remembered the pilot smiling at her as she jumped. Those were likely the last normal moments of Victoria's life. As an avid skydiver, the jump should have been routine for her. That Easter Sunday afternoon, the aircraft ascended to 4,000 feet above the Wiltshire countryside. Victoria made the leap. Only when her standard parachute failed did she realize something was drastically wrong. Her extensive training caused her survival instincts to kick in immediately. She deployed her reserve parachute, but watched in horror as it, too, failed to open properly. Now in full freefall, she reached a speed of 96 kilometers per hour as the ground rushed towards her at terrifying speed. Victoria later described that moment, saying that she remembered feeling tearful and scared, thinking that that just wasn't right. She didn't have time to consider that she might die. Her training took over as she fought to control her descent, desperately trying to slow her fall with what remained of her malfunctioning equipment. The impact was devastating. Victoria sustained life-threatening injuries, including a broken pelvis, fractured ribs, a fractured spine, and a collapsed lung. Those who witnessed the fall were so convinced she was dead that they brought a body bag to the scene. Fortunately, the ground was mercifully soft due to recent plowing. When the first responder reached her, he noticed that the lines on one side of her parachute were knotted. He soon realized that the soft links, or slinks, connecting the harness to the parachute were missing. Victoria had survived what seemed impossible. As she lay broken in that field, she had no idea that the man she loved, the father of her children, had just tried to murder her. And this wasn't even his first attempt. Victoria miraculously survived a 4,000-foot fall. When she woke up in the hospital, her husband, Emile, was there. She told him that she loved him, but he didn't respond. As she recovered from her severe injuries, Emile visited less and less often, and when he did, he seemed distant. Victoria later remembered that even though his employers gave him compassionate leave, he still went to work. She felt lonely in the hospital. She also noted that Emile didn't seem interested in her, and he never brought her gifts or cards. He asked Victoria, who was in the hospital, to sign insurance papers to start a personal injury claim. She found this insensitive, considering her condition. Unbeknownst to her, while at her bedside, he was messaging his girlfriend. He falsely claimed in a WhatsApp message that he and Victoria were legally separated and had split up months earlier because she cheated on him and hid her pregnancy. He also falsely claimed she said the baby wasn't his after a paternity test. These lies were later used as evidence against him. Initially, police had no reason to suspect foul play in what appeared to be a tragic skydiving accident. That changed when a friend of Victoria's approached the detectives with concerns about Victoria's relationship with her husband, Emile. The friend expressed doubts about their seemingly perfect marriage and suggested that if Emile had been near the parachute center during the incident, they should consider him a suspect. This tip proved remarkably accurate. Emile had indeed been at the skydiving facility on that Easter Sunday in 2015. Witnesses confirmed seeing him carrying Victoria's skydiving equipment after taking their infant daughter to the toilet. A crucial detail that would later become significant in the case: a parachute expert said Victoria's parachute had been checked 16 times by 10 experienced packers. The most recent inspection was 2 months before Easter, and the crucial components called slinks were present each time. However, after the accident, the British Parachute Association's investigation discovered a disturbing truth. Both Victoria's main and backup parachutes had been deliberately damaged. The slinks, essential for safety, were missing. This was not an accident but a murder attempt. 4 weeks after the fall, on the 28th of April, 2015, Emile Cilliers was arrested on suspicion of attempted murder related to the sabotaged parachute and was interviewed at Guildford Police Station. He denied committing any crime. However, as detectives delved deeper into his life, they uncovered a web of lies, deaths, and betrayals that painted a very different picture of the devoted husband. The truth was about to be revealed, and it was more shocking than anyone, including Victoria, could have anticipated. The investigation uncovered the shocking details of Emile's secret life: multiple affairs, large debt, visits to adult clubs, plans to harm Victoria, and proof that he controlled her. Specifically, the investigation revealed his affair with Stephanie Goller, whom he met while skiing. He also confessed to using dating apps, visiting swingers clubs often, and hiring escort service. Reviews Emile posted on Fab Swingers about alleged encounters suggest he had been unfaithful throughout their 6-year marriage. The most concerning information involved Emile's actions at a now-closed adult club in Salisbury, managed by Ricky Harwood. Court testimony and police records showed that Emile frequently visited the club while married to Victoria. There, he engaged in increasingly risky activities, suggesting he had lost control. All of this happened while Victoria was at home, raising their children and working multiple jobs to provide for the family. Evidence presented showed that Emile was £20,000 in debt. He had hoped to claim a £120,000 life insurance payout from his wife's accidental death to clear his financial woes and start a new life with Stephanie. The motive was becoming crystal clear. He wanted his wife dead to collect her life insurance and begin anew with his mistress. Investigators later linked the earlier gas leak to Victoria's case, discovering that she had been targeted twice in the same week. It was clear that Emile had deliberately deceived everyone he knew. Detective Inspector Paul Franklin's team spent 2 years investigating Emile, concluding he was a sociopathic narcissist. They found he manipulated and exploited those around him. He fathered 6 children with 3 women, 2 with Meline in South Africa, 2 with Carly, and 2 with Victoria. He promised each woman a future, controlled them, and then abandoned them for someone else. Victoria's reaction to the investigation complicated the case. Despite strong evidence against her husband, she defended him, This was due to the coercive control he had over her during their relationship. She even visited him in prison. Later, Victoria explained that she couldn't distinguish between truth and falsehood and felt trapped. She wanted the investigation to end so they could resume their lives and she could have her husband back. Victoria's behavior highlighted the damaging effects of coercive control. Even after almost being killed, she struggled to believe that her husband, whom she loved, had tried to murder her. She confessed that she couldn't understand how someone who claimed to love her could try to take her life. The trial began in Winchester Crown Court in October 2017. After 7 weeks, the jury couldn't agree on a verdict, and the trial was stopped. Victoria's defense of her husband and the complicated psychological aspects of the case made the jury uncertain. However, the prosecutors pursued the case. In May 2018, a second trial resulted in Emile being found guilty of 2 counts of attempted murder. He received a life sentence with a minimum of 18 years. Throughout the trials, Emile showed almost no emotion. He claimed Victoria had tried to end her own life, and suggested a stranger had tried to kill her. Detective Inspector Paul Franklin noted Emile showed no remorse for what he did. He lied during both trials, but he was ultimately found guilty and received a long prison sentence. Victoria's recovery was a long and arduous process. She spent several months in the hospital and underwent multiple surgeries to repair her injuries, with her broken pelvis alone requiring extensive treatment. Pelvic fractures are among the most serious bone injuries, often necessitating months of rehabilitation and sometimes resulting in permanent disability. Even her broken spine, fractured ribs, and collapsed lung, Victoria faced a recovery that medical experts described as miraculous. While most pelvic fractures become increasingly stable around 6 weeks after the event and typically heal within 3 months, Victoria's injuries were so extensive that her healing process took considerably longer. After Emile was found guilty, Victoria kept visiting him in prison. He had such a strong influence over her that she still had trouble believing what he had done. During these visits, Emile tried to persuade her to get back together with him, but eventually, Victoria couldn't deny the truth anymore. She told him she wanted a divorce, which she said made her feel free. Victoria said that, looking back, she finally understood everything. When Victoria finally decided she wanted a divorce, Emile refused to sign the papers, requesting more time to discuss the viability of their marriage. In other words, despite his 2 attempts to kill her and countless betrayals, he still believed they had a future together. His crimes had a widespread impact, affecting not only Victoria but also his children. Now, they struggle with the knowledge of their father's true character. In a documentary, Meline expressed her anger, saying that she had thought he loved her deeply. She said he had paid so much attention to her, and she couldn't understand how someone who had made her feel like their entire world, their favorite person, could just vanish. The children now know that their father not only abandoned them, but also attempted to murder their stepmother. Victoria lives in Wiltshire with her 2 children and works as a physiotherapist for the Ministry of Defense. She rebuilt her life after a difficult experience and is now in a relationship with Simon Goodman, a former Royal Marine Commando. In 2024, Victoria and Simon married in a small, private ceremony at a register office, starting a new chapter in her life. Victoria has written a book about her experience called I Survived, sharing her story of manipulation, abuse, and ultimately, survival. The memoir details not just the day of the attempted murder, but the story of an abusive marriage and how seemingly small misdemeanors can escalate into something much more dangerous. Emile is currently serving a life sentence after receiving 2 convictions for 2 counts of attempted murder. He is being held at Dovegate Royal Prison in Staffordshire. Justice was served, but some wounds take a lifetime to heal. Victoria's bravery in telling her story can help other women spot danger signs early on. This could prevent them from experiencing a similar situation where they feel lost and betrayed, wondering how someone who claimed to love them could endanger their lives. This case had no positive outcomes. However, Victoria's resilience prevented her husband's betrayal from ruining her future. Furthermore, Her children will grow up understanding that her strength saved not only her life but theirs too.